Cool skies and a trip to the valley awaits as the road to a championship stays on the West Coast tonight, this time through the Arizona desert. Welcome to coverage of the second race in the Season 3 4-Wide Racing Cup Series and race number 2 for the virtual Phoenix Raceway over here in Avondale, Arizona, as we bring you the coverage right here on MaxSpeedTV. Always happy to have you for our coverage of the 4-Wide Racing Cup Series, where my name is Kenneth Bueno over here in the broadcast booth, and tonight we'll stay on the West Coast, keeping the West Coast swing like we saw with the ARCA Series after a stellar race at the Auto Club Speedway. What a fantastic finish it was, where Colin Forster got his first win as a rookie. But tonight comes a complete contrast, a complete opposite race in Phoenix Raceway, a track that is known for challenging corners, a track that is known for slickness, although we're going to be under the lights here from Phoenix, where all the drivers will get ready for 200 laps, 200 miles. Phoenix Raceway, located all the way in Avondale, Arizona, not too far from the Phoenix city proper. It'll be all the way out, or not too far out, but a beautiful racetrack nonetheless. We'll take a look at our track map before we get things started, courtesy of our friends over at Google Earth. You take a look down Avondale, Arizona, there is the Phoenix Raceway. One thing to note about this Phoenix Raceway and the version on iRacing that we see in the modern times is the fact that the front straightaway and at least the start-finish line in the real world is located at the edge of what used to be turns 1 and 2. Here in the iRacing sim, we still have the line on that front straightaway that you see there on the other side of the dog leg, but there is good amount of banking in either corner. There are two different challenges in either sets of corners. You have 10 to 11 degrees over in turns 1 and 2 here in the sim, and 8 to 9 degrees over in turns 3 and 4. And probably going to see a lot of slick race cars, a lot of guys fighting their race cars over the course of tonight's action. There's a lot to be talking about, lots of storylines to get through, especially what has been going on within the past couple of weeks, especially within the last week here from the Phoenix Raceway, where Scott Healy was the last driver to take the win. A new driver that took the win dominantly, led 150 laps on the route to his win in that season. That was one that definitely played a big factor into what was going to happen in the playoffs, and it's definitely been a very, very good evening for him. But tonight is a completely different one, a night that will be a lot different than many probably at least consider it to be. And it's definitely going to be a lot of fun, and a lot of things going to play into what's going to be probably a fantastic race here for the Phoenix Race. So you take a look at the Cactus. A lot of drivers right now in qualifying within about 5 seconds, so we'll see exactly how things fare on the grid. But before that, we'll take a look at the entire schedule. This is the route to the championship, and of course it started at Auto Club last week. We'll have Phoenix here tonight in the nighttime under the lights before we ship to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. We'll go for 80 laps over there with the Cup cars. That provided us a very strategic race last season, so we'll see how that fares. In Daytona, which was the opening race last season, is now going to serve as the 4th race on August 11th, so we'll see how drivers fare with that, using kind of the super speedway mindset over in race 4 instead of race number 1. It goes to Pocono, Darlington, Watkins Glen, and the Dash for Cash qualifier at the Homestead of Miami Speedway, from Michigan, Talladega, Charlotte Roval, which moves all the way back to Daytona, which will then be the regular season finale. We'll move through Atlanta to the Championship 5. And of course, still a long way from now. That's December 29th, so still a couple of months away, but nonetheless, we're ready to get things started here for this race, which is definitely going to be the stepping stone to those moments, to the playoffs, and of course, to the championship finale over at Atlanta. Well, qualifying has just come to a close. Drivers are now set on the grid, and it is our time to take a look at your starting grid. See exactly where every driver and your favorite driver will be starting here tonight from the virtual Phoenix Raceway in race number 2 of the 4-Wide Racing Cup Series. Brandon T. Banks with the fastest time of them all, 26.939, will set him on the pole, and the first to see the green flag for tonight's action. Well, Brian M. Smith returning to the series. He's going to start on the outside of row number 1. Smith, a handful of time winner in last season's Cup Series. AJ Green going to be in the 3rd position on the inside of row number 2, with TJ Bursky looking for a weak sweep after winning last night's ARCA Series race at this very track, although on the Legacy version in the iRacing sim. Nonetheless, he's going to look for a 2nd straight win through the ARCA Series and the Cup Series. He starts in the outside of row number 2. Colin Forster, your winner from last week, in fantastic fashion at the Auto Club Speedway. He's going to start from the inside of the top 5, with Kyle Benson to his outside in P6. To row for number 4, Adam Alshire in the 4 machine, a rookie with a very good finishing position at Auto Club. He's going to look for a better one here tonight with Craig Lomsager to his outside in the 13 car. That'll line up row number 8. Jacob Smith, Joe Sanchez to double up at the edge of the top 10 in row number 5 with Eric Schaffer, Nicholas Vizzuti to the top 12. A lot of these guys, you're going to look as the heavy hitters who could potentially spoil the party. Lance Hill, Tyler Werner, 34-33 to the top 14 in row number 7 with Curtis Kelly, Michael Woolley all the way to row number 8 and P16. Tyler Murray, league owner, going to start from 17, so a lot of work to do for him over the course of 200 laps. We'll see how he does with Ken MacArthur to his outside in the 97. Dustin Webb, Pete Bruni all the way to your top 20 in row number 10 with Sean Hamilton, Christopher Bishop, Matt Roberts, Robert Parrott, Brandon Gillis, Michael Newbraw. Newbraw, one driver to not take time. He's the final driver on the grid. See everybody lined up behind the iRacing official pace car. Lots of things to talk about here at this Phoenix Raceway. And of course, one of those topics will be the weather. It is not sunny outside. We're under the lights here at Phoenix Raceway, so it's a rather cool night from this track. Track temperature at about 75 degrees with air temperature just a tick lower at 72. No humidity out there with east winds at about 5 to 6 miles per hour. So not much to worry about on that end. Last night there were a lot of concerns about the slickness of the race cars because it was the hot track surface. There was a lot of things to worry about because track temp was easily over triple digits, 123 degrees in fact, throughout the middle of this race. That's not going to be a concern tonight. Wasn't a concern in the Cup Series race last season, but still a big challenge ahead of every single driver. At the exit of turn 4, pace cars off. Brandon Banks, Brian M. Smith to the green flag from Phoenix. All good for the driver on the outside of row number 1. Brian Smith shoots up to the race lead. Not as good of a start for your pole sitter, Brandon Banks. He falls to P5 as they continue to go side by side for what is P3. That's AJ Green, Kyle Benson at the exit of 3 and 4, looking for that position as Colin Forster. He tries to battle with Alan Alshire underneath him for position at the moment as they come across the line, still side by side, but it's Brian M. Smith to the front of this field, although might be a challenge from the 94 right behind him and TJ Bursky. He might give his Toyota Camry a shot. As we go back into 3, still of lap number 3. Still a long race to go here at Phoenix, of course 200 laps. So telemetry says that about an hour and a half we'll have this race complete. Although we'll see if yellows come out as a big swivel out of, I believe that was Kyle Benson trying to fight against AJ Green. And speaking of yellows, we already have our first, and a big wreck on the front straightaway. Craig Lomsager involved, Eric Schaffer in it as well. Didn't seem to be anybody else, but huge damage to the 13. Who had done well in this race, had done well in multiple short track events in the Cup Series last season. He's got a beat up race car. He's definitely going to be looking for that fast repair at the start of this race. Probably not the start that he anticipated whatsoever. We'll try to take a look at the replay, see exactly what happened, how these guys got collected. Of course, it was the exit at turn 4 that started all of this. It was actually the 13 that got loose all by his lonesome at the exit of 4. See Joe Sanchez, he gets into it as well. And this was a cause of concern for the Cup Series race last season, just drivers getting loose off of turn 4. You see the 34 gets into that as well. Was Lance Hill right on board with him. Just a big hit to the nose as Craig Lomsager was just right in his windshield. Joe Sanchez also mentioned got a piece of it as well. He was right in front of Lance Hill when this happened, right behind the action up in front. I believe it was Jacob Smith who had a little bit of a hit. The 26 gets tapped a little bit. You see Sanchez goes straight for the inside wall. Eric Schaffer gets collected. Oh, what a job by the 73 of Dustin Webb to get out of all that mess. But we lay under our first caution as, of course, many of the drivers now down pit road. I think in obvious fashion. You see Nicholas Vizzuti, he had some minimal damage from that incident. So he's also going to take a trip down pit road. Not sure whether he's going to employ the faster pair, although Joe Sanchez is. And we'll look to see the 13 do the same thing. He's already burned it off, but he's already a step ahead of time. He's already out there. Brandon Gillis going to go down pit road as well. And the field will be frozen behind Brian M. Smith. Not a good start by your pole sitter, as Banks actually fell to P5 at the exit of turn 2. And Francisco and I talked about it a little bit earlier in the booth for the ARCA Series race last night on Tuesday, was the fact that guys were not using the dog leg because the legacy version of Phoenix does not have the dog leg, as Phoenix used to always have grass in that section of the back straightaway before you would get to turn 3. But here, of course, on the modern Phoenix, you can use all the pavement all the way to the inside wall. I guess a lot of the drivers did use the exit of 2, use the dog leg to try and get advantage of Brandon Banks. And, of course, included your race leader now. Of course, included TJ Bursky. And it's a completely different race this time around, knowing that Scott Healy is not in this event. Of course, Scott Healy dominated this race last season at the tail end of the playoffs, led 150 out of the 200 to win the race and keep his championship hopes alive. And now that he's not in this series, not in this race tonight, it's going to change the entire trajectory of it. Brian M. Smith, he's been one of the only drivers, apart from Healy and a handful of others, to be dominant at many tracks across the season. Was able to capture a couple wins. Was not a playoff driver last season, but of course looking to change things and participate the entire route all the way to the championship. We'll see what happens on this restart. 2 Toyota Camrys lined up on the front row, with Brian M. Smith choosing the outside as the pace car comes off. The 78 gets the jump, and we're back under green. Another good start by the 78 of Brian Smith, just looking to control, keep himself away. But the battle for second may end up within the next couple of turns. As you see, Jacob Smith completely got set at the outside wall. That was a hit, I believe, by the 4 of Adam Alishire, Brandon Banks. They both got caught up in it. As you watch Alishire go underneath the 88 of Banks, coming into 3 and 4. And Jacob Smith with significant right side damage on his Ford Mustang. He's going to end up in a tough spot right in the midst of Tyler Murray, Michael Woolley, all the way through the edge of the top 10. And Smith was looking for a good run. Almost had that contact in that first incident. Now he's going to be mired back just a little bit just because of that. Battle for second already happened. We saw Kyle Benson get around the 94 of Bursky. And now here comes AJ Green, the driver of the 48, the Plan B Sales Chevrolet Camaro, or Circle B diecast, rather. You can call them both that. He's now on the charge to 4th. I'm going to look for the top 5. Going to look for the top 3. AJ Green, one of those drivers we saw fighting heavily for the top spot at Auto Club last week. It was pretty much a melee for every single position. AJ Green was part of that. Kyle Benson was also a member. TJ Bursky was kind of part of it for a while and had a Pittsburgh speeding penalty. He got sent back to the field as he pretty much has a bobble out of turn 4. It's going to allow AJ Green to now come up as top 4. Have now broken away by a mere 2.5, at least at this point, or a second flat in this case. And many of the drivers now just looking to log in these first couple laps. Smith now over by about 3/10. Everybody around single file for the most part. You see some side-by-side battling up in front. That's Michael Woolley to the inside of Curtis Kelly. We saw Curtis as a driver sporting a very colorful Scooby-Doo Arkham and Art Series Chevrolet Impala last Tuesday, or rather last night on Tuesday here at Phoenix. And now he's going to be under fire from Woolley as he run on board near the rear, just trying to get the laps in, trying to make use of that second groove. Doesn't seem to be working right now. Smith now to the inside. He's going to try and pioneer his way to the yellow line in 3 and 4. No success there. Going to tuck back in where Tyler Murray's at. And it seems as though battle for second may end up becoming a thing as caution comes out for the second time here tonight. Trying to look around the field, and it is the 08 of Pete Bruni upside down on his roof on the front straightaway. And I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but it's the second incident we have here tonight. Second one involving the front straightaway. We'll try to take a look at the replay, see exactly what happened, and it might have been a situation all on his own right. We'll take a look at the replay here coming out of turn 4. Actually, no, it was Brandon Gillis who completely packed it to the inside wall and collected the 08 of Bruni. Just not sure how Bruni ended up on his roof. Maybe just a meeting with the wall. Not exactly sure. You take a look here. The hit to the 9 actually just got sent upward, hit the wall, got verted to the right, and was upside down for a handful of moments. That enabled him to tow it. So unfortunate start for Pete Bruni, who did not have a good run over at the Phoenix Raceway last night in the ARCA Series. Parked it a little bit earlier. Not sure whether he had an incident or just kind of ran out of time and just decided to park it for the 9 DNF. He was a handful of laps down. He ended near the top 20. What that is a couple drivers are going to make their stops down pit road. Jacob Smith going to be one of them, the 90 of Colin Forrester, last week's winner. He's also going to be down pit road to get service. Very, very early, though, in this race to take tires and fuel. There's 6 tires in the pits tonight, so we're going to keep that in mind as a potential strategy point. 200 laps, a very long race, and this track can easily eat up the tires if you kind of drive this track the wrong way. So we'll see how that works, but for most of the field, it's going to be no tires, no service down pit road. But now it'll be our time as in lap 15 to introduce the second member of our broadcast team, Francisco Bacchiao. Francisco, of course, welcome to the booth. I know it's a little bit late, but we're already 15 laps in, so we didn't miss too much. So a long way to go here in this race for the Full Wide Racing Cup Series. And we had been in the booth last night for the ARCA Series race, completely different track. It was the Phoenix Raceway, but the legacy version. And now you bring in the modern Phoenix Raceway at night with these NASCAR Cup Series cars, similar to what we saw at the break of last season in the playoffs. So what kind of challenges do we see driver standpoint wise with these kind of cars, these kind of track, especially with the references that we've had from last season?
Always happy to be here, Kenneth. Just had to take a couple of things under my control with a potential job, and all that comes first. So I'm here now. We're in the booth, and might I say, early on in this race, it seems like we have a lot of trouble. When I walked into the booth, I came across to seeing the 08 of Pete Bruni upside down. So hopefully that's not an indication of what we have in store. But you mentioned the challenges of this track versus the one we had last night with the ARCA cars and it being the Legacy Phoenix. This one, it's a smooth racetrack, but it being in the desert, the hot and slick nature of the desert atmosphere does create some inherent slickness into the asphalt as it sits over that sun and just aging and aging. So it's not too old of a surface. It's relatively new, but just sitting in the sun does give it that same sort of characteristic of feeling hot and slick. Even when it's night like this, the track temperatures may be down, but when you combine that with the low downforce these cars have, it's very hard to get a grip.
It's been hard for many drivers tonight, especially at the exit of 4, and it's tough for the 48 of AJ Green as he's going to spin the 88 of Brandon Banks around as soon as we get the restart, and the caution waves immediately as the 48 had big trouble getting up through the gears, putting in the gas. Gotta imagine he might have been in first gear at the edge of that restart. He bobbled just a little bit. You see the damage on the right front. He got into the 88 of Brandon Banks, who was the pole sitter tonight. And Banks gets a bit of damage on his right as well. He was turned around on the front straightaway. So the front straightaway seems to be the trouble spot. You'll take a look at the replay. You're right on board with Brandon T. Banks and just looking for an over restart, trying to get back underway to lap 20. All of a sudden sees the 48 bobble in front of him, and he has nowhere to go.
Right here, all is good, and then the 48 round he goes, barely clips Brandon T. Banks, and that's enough to send him around. And fortunately doesn't hit the inside wall, so very minimal contact on that 88. Shouldn't have to use his fast repair. He can probably save that for later in the race. You see a pretty good hit there. But if you look at that 88, not too much damage on that car, so he should be fine for the rest of the day. The 48 doesn't have too much as well. He did also hit the wall, has some front end damage potentially. But I think right here we're going to get an on board with the 69 of Michael Woolley. We'll see what he saw. And the 88 coming down, and that's going to be some front end damage. We'll have to see if he's down RPM, and then a little bit of a hit after there, you see with the 44. We'll just have to see if he does decide to take that fast repair, because that's a pretty good amount of front end damage. That could possibly put you down some RPM and hurt the aero on that car.
And 69 of Michael Woolley has not elected to go down pit road, I believe, just yet. He currently sits in P5. You see his damage, Jurassic Park Ford Mustang. You see the damage there. So I'm not exactly sure whether he's got engine damage or not, whether he was able to escape with that kind of contact without either RPMs lost on his race car or whether he just believes it's too early to run the fast repair. We already had a couple drivers do it. Craig Lonsart was one of them after a big hit on the front straightaway, the exit of 4 after hitting Jacob Smith, and collecting a handful of others, including Eric Schaffer A lot of these guys elected for the faster pair. Brandon Banks, he's down pit road. He's not going to burn the faster pair. Pete Bruni, he's going to be 4 laps down. You saw him on his roof just a couple laps ago. So he's already with a clean race car. Brandon Banks going to wait a minute to repair the damage, although he most likely will be 1 lap down. And that was a problem, Francisco, in last season's Cup race. We saw a lot of yellow similar to that, where drivers just get loose either off restarts or coming off turn 4 where it's so flat. And we had a conversation about how loose it can get, especially off turn 4 with the ARCA race last night, although it wasn't necessarily a big concern. But with these cars, of course, you have a very different challenge. You have a different challenge compared to the ARCA car. And the ARCA car does get loose on its own right. It is a challenge also, and it's a different beast. But these cars have way more power, 750 horsepower underneath the hood, and you have a completely different package where the spoiler's a lot lower, the spoiler's a lot smaller, and it's just a completely different beast overall, to the point where you have to manhandle it a lot differently than what you would do with the ARCA Series car, where it kind of feels like you have a little more control, versus the Cup car, it feels like you're all over the place.
Yeah, if you notice the Cup cars, they look a lot different to the ARCA cars apart from the obvious in the body. But if you notice the ride heights with these Cup cars, they're relatively flat from the front end to the rear end. There's not too much of a difference. Obviously, the rear is going to be higher than the front end, but it's nothing like the ARCA cars. Usually that difference between the front end and the rear end is called the rake, and the rake of the ARCA cars is much higher, so it puts that spoiler up in the air more. So though it's not that big of a spoiler, it produces more downforce, it being up there into the air. But given the fact that it does have a little bit less power, it creates the, if you will, it creates that sort of racing we see out of those cars where they're struggling for grip, but at the same time, it's not to the extent of the Cup cars, with the Cup cars obviously having even more power and even smaller of a spoiler. So the ARCA cars are a mini version of the Cup cars with less power, a little bit more downforce inherently. So when you look at the differences between those two and you're wondering, well, what's going on with these guys? Why are they struggling so much? It's just tough to drive these stock cars, period, on a flat racetrack.
But we'll see if there are no issues this time around. To the green flag, again, Brian M. Smith controls the start. It'll be side-by-side for a second, as Curtis Kelly mans the outside on Kyle Benson going into the first couple of corners, into the dogleg on the back straightaway. You see Tyler Murray, Adam Alishire on the forward, making way for about P4, P5 on the racetrack right now. Everybody's going to clear themselves back to turns 3 and 4. We'll see if we can get a clean lap in without anybody getting loose. You see Curtis Kelly trying to rock that second lane, although to no avail, and seems to be no issues with the 69 of Michael Woolley. He's able to keep on without power issues, so I think that's a good thing to note for that 69, considering the hard hit he took to Brandon Banks just a couple of laps ago. As Brian M. Smith continues to run up front, already about 0.6 of a second, and still more battling through the field, but everybody just looking to stay single file, looking to log in these laps. So a long race, only lap 23 and already 3 yellows marked in the books.
Earlier today, Kenneth, I took a spin around the Phoenix Raceway with these Cup cars just to see what these guys are going to be facing with. I did it under the sunlight. Obviously, they're racing at night right now, but regardless of that, one of the things I noticed is that in 3 and 4, if you can wrap that yellow line around the whole corner, it'll really help your tires. It could possibly save them a bit and perhaps even go turn a little bit of a quicker lap time. But right now, we see the caution has been waived. The 94 of TJ Bursk, yesterday's race winner and the winner of the first 2 ARCA races, is involved in this one. We see another car there a little bit further back, but early on, TJ Bursk into trouble.
TJ Bursky, who was up on the front of this field, contending with Brian M. Smith, now with damage to the rear end of his car, and this is the second time that Eric Schaffer has been involved in an incident in tonight's running. As Bursky gonna look away almost to pit road, but I think gonna wait until it opens, so he does not get a penalty. We'll see exactly what happened. And Bursky was near the rear of the field when this happened here. It was around Eric Schaffer to the midfield, and probably an incident down pit road, but it was actually contact between the 42 and the 22 going into the exit of turn 2. You see Bursky tries to make it 3. I think Schaffer washes up the racetrack in reaction, then hits the 42, then gets into the 94, and close goes Christopher Bishop to almost being the 3rd car collected. But unfortunately, last night's winner, the 94 of TJ Bursky, was looking for the weak sweep here tonight from Phoenix. He's going to be in a little bit of trouble here early in the going.
Yeah, that exhaustion machine is going to have some work to do now. Probably going to have to take that faster car. That's a pretty big hit to the rear of that car. And You see right there, the 88 of Brandon T. Banks able to avoid him, and we have some takers on pit road. The leaders, for the most part, staying out, but a good portion of the back of the field is coming in. We see the 48 without a rear clip. No fast repair taken by him. Brandon T. Banks also electing to save it, and here we have cars coming out of pit road.
Yeah, many of the guys around third on back going down pit road. You saw Curtis Kelly, his red and white Chevrolet Camaro. He's on his way. There's Colin Forster, AJ Green. There goes the 56 of Michael Newball. Of course, as aforementioned, the 94 of TJ Bursky. There's the 8 of Banks, finally out of pit road. So many of these guys looking for early stops, but still many of the top drivers right now have not elected to go down pit road. I'm surprised that Michael Woolley didn't take this opportunity to go down and take his fast repair. Either to take his fast repair or spend some time repairing the damage, because if he doesn't have engine damage, then okay, you can keep with it for the most part. Save that fast repair for later when you might actually need it in a crucial situation. But surprised that Woolley did not join a good amount of the field to go down pit road. I think he's just going to continue to wait, maybe stay on the same strategy as the leaders, with Joe Sanchez behind him, who was on the opposite end of the spectrum. He got involved in the first incident tonight. He already turned his fast repair off because he's already used it. So his Ford Mustang now are going to be without a fast repair for the rest of this race, and probably going to take advantage of the fact that a lot of these guys have pitted early. And especially with this track, I think between the opposite end with the ARCA race last night, considering it was so hot, it was in the triple digits track temperature wise. For this race, how different do you have to approach kind of the tire strategy and the way pitch strategy will work, considering the fact that we've already seen a handful of yellows in the first 27 laps of this race, and the fact that the track is overall a lot cooler and not as abrasive as it would be during the day.
Well, these guys do have 6 extra sets of tires, so that's basically 7 runs when you include the tire set in which they start, that you can split this race up evenly and go according to that sort of strategy. So if a caution were to come out at so-and-so point, you can determine, okay, it's in this window, I can perhaps pit, or if it's not within that window, then you stay out so that you don't end up short of tires at the end of the race, because obviously you'd rather have tires at the end of the race than use them all up in the first half of the race. So if you were to take 7 into the 200 laps that these guys are going to be running here tonight, that gives you about 28 laps, which we are at right now. We saw most of the field come down pit road just there and take tires. So if those people if that's their first tire set, I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure it is, but if it is their first tire set, then they're on pace to evenly split these tires, and they'll be considerably fresher, but it just comes down to, will they have green flag laps to put them into use?
We haven't had many. We've had a lot of yellows to start this race. We'll see if we can get a long green flag run in as Brian M. Smith to the outside of row number 1. Again, controls the restart to lap 29. Kyle Benson going to defend at turn 1 against Tyler Murray and Michael Woolley into the first set of corners, as Smith, who had taken the lead on the first lap of this race, has already sailed on a mission to keep control of it. Everybody spreads to the dog leg, everybody fanning out to turn 3.
One of the most difficult things that doesn't get talked about too much is that dog leg on a restart. You can be 5 wide and have no clue that you're in 5 wide situations. So it's very difficult to navigate the restarts in the dog leg. But as you mentioned, perhaps getting a long run, not the case this time. The 22 of Eric Schaffer around.
Again, Eric Schaffer, third time he's been involved in an incident tonight, and we saw Eric Schaffer. I don't think in any case we can count him out, even with these incidents, because we saw at Auto Club last Wednesday, he was very valiant on the effort. So try to take a replay and see exactly what happened between the two. It was actually a big hit up in the front of this field, and it wasn't just Eric Schaffer who got into this. It was many drivers ahead of him, including the 48 of AJ Green, I believe the 16 of Matt Roberts, the 9 of Brandon Gillis. They all completely sacked it into the outside wall in turn 3. You saw Adam Alishar right there. He made the move, and I think that's what allowed the 9 to just spread up the track, because he was looking for the 4 underneath him. Gets into the 48 to 16. And then as a result, Brandon Gillis with significant damage, and then Eric Schaffer, who gets sent around, which completes the yellow flag.
Yeah, not enough real estate there for all those cars to go around that corner. They were all trying to find the same piece of racetrack, and that just wasn't going to work.
So again, under yellow, still putting us within that concern that we talked about right there, just trying to put in green flag laps, and for the moment, we haven't had too many of those. Already about 5 cautions before we've even got to, I think, the first section of this race. We're not even in the first 5th of this race, really. Still a long way to go from Phoenix, and already the complete different route that the Cup Series races have taken already, the ARCA races rather. As you saw a mostly clean ARCA race, a couple of incidents here and there, especially through midway, but it was mostly relying on the long runs. It's exactly where you made your money if you were the ARCA Series driver, but here in the Cup Series, you have to play around with the yellows a lot more since they come out more frequently. We saw that at Auto Club. Lots of guys got involved in incidents, especially near the last half of the race, where we had to get near green-white checkered territory to determine a winner. And tonight, we could be on track to getting that, or potentially getting more than 10 yellows. And that's what happened last season, so it's not like the consistency is kind of ramped down a little bit, Francisco, because even when Scott Healy, we saw him dominate the race and let 150 out of the 200 here near the playoffs, we still had a lot of these issues. A lot of guys were getting into trouble. A lot of guys, especially in 3 and 4, were having the most problems. And it just took playing yourself either on pitch strategy under yellow or just hanging on with these yellows as most as you can. That's really what determined whether you were going to win this race or not.
And if you're these leaders with these cautions that continuously come out after 1 or 2 laps, of course you'd stay out. Not only are your tires not getting that much usage out of them, but you keep the track position because you're not going to put yourself behind all this traffic and risk getting caught in one of these incidents. Of course you're not going to do that. So unless you were to run 20 laps, maybe 15 laps straight without a yellow, maybe you don't come down pit road until a situation like that happens. But as long as there's continuous yellows, none of these guys up front should consider coming down pit road because it's not worth the risk of putting yourself in the midst of all this chaos that's going on.
So again, we'll rack them up through the top 10. Brian M. Smith, still your race leader. He's going to choose the outside once more, so probably going to expect him to shoot out towards the turn 1. Kyle Mason, Tyler Murray into your top 3. Michael Woolley, Joe Sanchez in the top 5. Sanchez involved in the first incident. He's already back through this position with Tyler Warner now. Going to be in the outside of row 3. Jacob Smith, Ken MacArthur, the P8 with Sean Hamilton, Nicholas Fizzuti through the top 10. A lot of drivers already switching places, of course, with that recent call for many to go down pit road. That has changed the order up just a bit, but it has not changed at all between the top 2 for a while since the start, or since Brandon Banks is the pole sitter. Got swarmed by many of these guys for the top positions. We'll see what happens on this restart. Lap 34 going to get underway. Pace car makes its left down a pit road. Again, an early start by the 78 of Brian Smith, typical of him, to turn 1. He's going to control the restart by a handful of car lengths as Benson fights everybody else back to turn 1.
And that's the advantage of restarting on the top. I mentioned this in the broadcast yesterday, Kenneth, during the ARCA race, that if you can restart on that top and sort of turn down the track and pin that guy on the bottoms, that he can't get that good of an acceleration, it could really work out in your favor. Tyler Murray, with a bit of a moment there in 3 and 4, had to really check up his car, and he's going to lose the 3rd position there and maybe under fire by the 26 at the end of turn into turn 1.
There goes Jacob Smith, going to hard break into the inside of turn 1. Murray just a little bit slower there. You saw him make a big check-up moment, I guess, just being wary of Michael Woolley going into the corner as he was working at that inside groove. And already many of them fanning out. You see Ken MacArthur, Tyler Warner making the case for a position behind them. As Joe Sanchez looks to the inside of Tyler Murray. That'll be for the 5th position on the racetrack. Sanchez going to take advantage, and everybody else now going to try and swarm. And remember, a lot of these guys on fresher tires. They pitted just not too long ago, so they could use the tire advantage to their advantage. Get closer up to the position, get all these guys a little bit early on the short run, and then just try to pull away. And especially if a yellow does not come out, then it'll change the strategy game up completely, and it could work in their advantage as top 2 have worked themselves around, and they're about a second away from Michael Woolley, who's now under fire from Jacob Smith.
And of course, these guys that just pitted for tires, they want this to go green for a bit. They want to sort of gain the track position over these guys who have stayed out. That way, if they get a long enough run where everybody has to come down pit road, they'll all be on equal equipment, and they'll have the track position that these guys that currently are running in the top 2 spots won't have at that point, because it'll be taken over by guys like this who are sideways. Jacob Smith there with a big moment, able to save it. He does not want to do that with those fresher tires. He wants to make sure that he can keep them cool so that he can go out there and chase down those leaders.
And you want to be able to conserve your stuff, especially at a track like Phoenix, where 3 and 4 can really scorch them up if you don't play it the right way. And that's been a big talking point, as Adam Alashar goes 3 wide through the dog leg underneath Lance Hill and Tyler Warner. He's going to actually make it stick for a moment. Lance Hill's going to fight back on the outside, but 3 3 and 4, just the pivotal moment of this racetrack. Turns 1 and 2.
Oh, we got one
seems to
around
be
back
good
there.
as one goes around behind. Then that's Michael Newbraw. Has a meeting with the inside safer barrier, but able to keep it straight, so no caution comes out. And we stay green. Everybody now still looking for all the positions. Alashire still underneath Lance Hill. Not sure if he's going to be able to make it work to 3 and 4. A little bit tight up there. He's going to push the 34 car parts machine out of whack. And Alashire is still trying to put the gas in, but just can't quite do it. As there's a lot of guys up in the front making moves. There goes MacArthur.
Willie was slow on the front straightaway, Kenneth. He's had a problem off of turn number 4. He's gotten passed by everybody.
Might have gotten very loose as the 07 Sean Hamilton went by. Ken MacArthur also did the same. But he's going to try and pick back up the positions that he lost. So he's going to stay around here. But as I was mentioning, just a pivotal moment of the racetrack. Just this part in 3 and 4 where you're trying to put the throttle in. Car does not have that much grip, nor the downforce because of the package that we're using. And because of that, it just makes things a whole lot tougher. It doesn't matter what the conditions are. You're going to have a handful trying to keep this car straight and trying to plant the throttle down as you ride on board. And the 69 gets turned. Will he be able to save it? The answer is yes. And we saw many saves in the ARCA race last night. Count that to the week as the 69 able to keep it straight, although he's going to lose a myriad of track position.
I'm curious as to how he lost all that time and to begin with. He was running in the 3rd position behind your top 2 a couple laps ago, and he was slow off turn 4. And that's what put him in this mess back here. And you see right there the 71 of Kelly trying to be aggressive, gets into the back of him, but an incredible job to save that race car. But let's see if we can go back another lap or so to see what exactly put him back there to begin with, because he was in the 3rd position, just in front of Jacob Smith, as we have a caution on the speedway now. But right there, Jacob Smith got to the inside, and oh, he actually put him into the wall.
And just washed up the track, and then you see everybody scrambling to get around. That was the battle between Alashire and Lance Hill. They couldn't quite get around Willie at the exit in the entrance of turn 1. But for MacArthur and the 07, everybody else who was behind Willie at the time directly, they were able to get around him as we have another caution on the racetrack. And it might have involved Lance Hill here. He was up to the field to the top 10, and we saw him battling with the 4 of Alashire, and he's got more damage on the 34 machine, so we'll see if he was the cause of concern on this yellow flag. Actually, it was the 71 that got turned by the 34, so the 34 was directly involved, but it was the 71 of Kelly. Oh. Big hits by both the 69 of Woolley, the 73 of Dustin Webb. Launsarger, unfortunately, in it again. That's the 2nd time he's had his car completely torn up by an incident on the front straightaway. We'll try to ride on board with the 71 of Kelly. And again, just the exit of 4 being the concern for every driver tonight.
Yeah, you can see he just got away from him, and he was sideways. And unfortunately, someone from behind got into the back of him. That upset the car even more. And that's what triggered this chain of events. And the front stretch is very narrow with that pit wall being where it is. I mean, it doesn't get talked about too much, really. So when you're going into turn number 1, everyone's trying to funnel down to about 2 or 3 wide. And it's just, you run out of real estate.
You run out of space, you run out of time to react as field comes out of pit road. Big change for P2, P3. How about Jacob Smith, Joe Sanchez making the charge up to 2nd and 3rd respectively. Kyle Benson falls back to P4 in this exchange. So the first time we see anybody not named Kyle Benson move up to the top 2 within the last 20 laps or so. Now Smith and Sanchez going to have the attack on Brian M. Smith if they're able to put that fight up. Nobody's really been able to challenge Smith apart from TJ Bursky at the opening section of this race. But nobody else has really been able to catch nor keep pace. There's an update on TJ Bursky. He's actually 15 laps down. He has parked here for the night, so I guess the week sweep will not happen once again. Just issues for the 94 in the Cup Series. It's been stellar in the ARCA Series within the past 2 weeks in the first 2 races. But it's definitely been quick and easy for him. However, the Cup Series has just been a completely different story. Well, going into race 2, we'll of course talk about the point standings. Not necessarily too big to note because, of course, it was only after 1 race at Auto Club, but this is exactly what you're looking at after race 1 at Auto Club. Colin Forster, who was the winner through green-white checkered territory, so he is locked into the playoffs. Eric Schaffer, AJ Green, about 6 to 7 points behind, so everything rather still tight, Francisco, and I think just a good point about season play, about early season stretches, is that you want to make the most amount of points in a stage like this. You want to start out the season with a bang. Of course, you could still have a good amount of ample time to make recoveries. Let's say if you don't have good races or something bad happens to you within the first couple of events, but through the first handful of races, you want to be consistent, you want to be strong, because you want to be in the same column as Colin Forster, or just have a good points gap to be up there and still dominating the rest of the playoff grid.
Of course, you always want to be on the left side of the point sheet right there, and the best way to do that is to guarantee the best results possible by going out there and just getting the best finish. And of course, it's very difficult to do that. It's very easy to say just get the best result when you look at races like this where there's constant chaos around you, and you have to navigate it and persevere through the finish. But one of the ways that you can do that in a race where you have a bad day is, say you're the 13 of Craig Lonsonder. He's had all sorts of trouble tonight, and he could sit here, run multiple laps down, but if he stays here until the end of the race, he could very well finish somewhere close to that 17th or 16th place mark, which is way better than finishing somewhere around 23rd.
It's definitely a tough challenge regardless, as the field spreads back to the front straightaway. Green flag is out as Brian M. Smith. Not as good of a restart this time. Smith able to hold on with him, as well as Kyle Benson. Got a good jump on Joe Sanchez coming into turn 1 and 2. Going to be side by side as they head for the dog leg.
The Smiths are trying to go 1-2, but Kyle Benson putting on a stout effort around the outside. The 26 trying to dive it underneath. The 10 a little bit up the racetrack, almost into the gray. 26 trying to turn down the racetrack, not able to find the grip. He'll lose that spot to Kyle Benson. He retakes the second position behind race leader Brian M. Smith, and the top 5 hasn't changed all too much. There you see Joe Sanchez up into the 4th position. Tyler Murray now trying to see if he can fend off.
Fending off the 07 of Sean Hamilton. That's the 4 of Adam Alishire, who we saw making good moves to the front of this field. He's going to try and pick that back up as he heads through the flat corners in 3 and 4. Big pack behind them, though, around Dustin Webb, Christopher Bishop, Brandon T. Banks, Lance Hill. A lot of these drivers who got collected in earlier incidents. There's Colin Forster, last week's winner. He's kind of stuck in the middle of all this as well. And Webb just leading this large group of guys. We saw it especially through last season's race where the packs like this can develop, especially earlier in the run. Now here comes Banks to the inside. This is the battle for P11.
And I'll say something here that probably doesn't get talked about, but I think you can also attest to this, Kenneth, is if when you're side by side with somebody going through the dog leg, it's very difficult to be the person on the outside, because if you don't communicate through the race chat with the person on your inside as to whether they're going to cut the dog leg or not, that can result in an incident. That could very well happen. You might think the car on your inside is going to cut the dog leg, and you want to also cut it, but not to the same extent. And before you know it, you're hitting his door, and that could result in a crash.
And it could, and especially in the fact that with the low downforce package, we've seen many a times where drivers have gotten loose in that transition, because it's such a rough transition from the banking in the dog leg to the sort of the flatter apron in that dog leg. You see right there, car bumps around a little bit, and it really roughens up the race car. And if you hit it the wrong way, if the tires are worn out, your car is a lot slicker than usual, or let's say you burn off your tires over the course of a run, using that dog leg is just going to be less efficient, because in that turn, you're going to get loose, car's going to step out, and you're going to have a large risk of sending yourself around and possibly collecting others. And there's been countless times, both in real life and in the sim, where that dog leg has disproportionately affected a lot of drivers negatively, and has resulted in cautions throughout the racetrack here at Phoenix. But so far, Brian M. Smith, the control car, as Kyle Benson aims to try get around that 78, make a pressure move on the 78. And Kyle Benson, driver that we talked about extensively last season in the Cup Series, so dominant, so stout in the point standings, was able to control it. Unfortunately, was not the championship winner after an issue happened at Charlotte. That's what allowed Scott Healy to take away the championship. But Kyle Benson, such a strong driver, and a strong driver at a track like this. Has been strong at many 1.5 milers and many other events throughout the schedule, including the road courses, but can't count him out on the 1 mile short track. He's been stellar here as well as he rides P2 and you ride on board with him.
If you were a team owner, you want a driver like Kyle Benson on your team. He's just able to give you that all-around performance at all types of racetracks to really just be a threat every single time you go out there and race. So that is something you really want a driver. There's drivers that sometimes excel at short tracks. There's drivers that sometimes excel in the intermediates, on the super speedways, on the road courses. But if you can get all of those in just one single driver, that makes your life as a team owner much better because you know that you can go out there and compete. And of course, it makes the driver feel better because he knows that he has a shot to win every single time he's out on there on the racetrack. So if there's anybody that can compete at every single racetrack, it's those top two right now, really, because we've seen also Brian M. Smith has been very competitive on all sorts of racetracks, and let's not even get started on his success on the road courses like we saw at the Daytona road course last season and in the Charlotte Roval before he decided to retire early.
And Brian M. Smith, he was a handful of time winner, and he was a winner at the track that we're visiting next week, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so he's going to be looking to defend his title after a bold strategy move in that race last season to take away the checkered flag, and I believe that was his third in that season. As he rode on board Lance Hill, this is defending against Colin Forrester. This is just outside of the top 10, around P12, and Forrester and his Circle B diecast machine and Ply B Sales, or whatever you want to call it. They're both around the same name, but Forrester, that winner at Auto Club, was a rookie and was definitely happy to have his win in that sort of event. He's going to go around the 34th hill going into turn 1. But a very good run by Forrester right now as Lance Hill completely edges it sideways. He's able to keep it straight. But Forrester, good start to the season. We talked about the point standings. He already has that win to lock him into the playoffs. Just needs, of course, the eligibility in attendance to enable him and give him that shot to the playoffs. And at least for now, he will be the playoff leader, let's say, if it ended right here, right now, although we're only in race 2.
Yeah, and of course the most difficult thing is get that win out of the way, and he did that on race 1. So now it's just about showing up, making sure you can meet the minimum attendance required to qualify you for the playoffs officially, and of course just go for wins. Points don't matter for you anymore, so it's all about going out there trying to get as many wins as possible so that you can put yourself in a better spot for the playoff reset.
Of course, the playoffs will mean everything later on, and Phoenix was a very pivotal round in the playoffs and kind of what started Scott Healy's move up to championship glory. It was all about the wins later on in the season. Of course, Kansas was a very pivotal race as well. The meeting to Charlotte, going up to Charlotte, leading up to that race, Scott Healy was just clicking off in the right place at the right time. And Phoenix was one of those places where he had gotten it all started. And Scott Healy, not in this season, hasn't shown up to the first 2 races, unfortunately, so we haven't seen any out of the defending champion. And hopefully we're able to see him soon back in this series to compete against the best in the series, because we've seen him do a lot of great things against guys like Kyle Benson, guys like Brian M. Smith. Definitely put the fight up to a lot of these competitors, and hopefully we end up seeing him soon. Here's a nice little tight battle for P6. Here's the 07 of Sean Hamilton. Haven't seen him too much throughout. I believe he attended last week's race at Auto Club. One of the rookies in this season as he tries to fight against the 33 of Tyler Warner. Was the Daytona winner last season. Had a deep run in the playoffs, and now he tries to work the inside so far to no avail.
Trying to make that inside work here is very difficult. It's the preferred line, if you will, but it's very difficult because it's just such a struggle to put the power down. On the outside, it's just there also isn't that much grip to really consistently make it work, but it's definitely you can make it work if you can pin that guy to the inside. It's just like a lesser of two evils, if you will. Pinning the guy to the inside is more effective than trying to sort of push that guy out of the grip zone on the outside. It doesn't end pretty if you try to push him out into that gray area.
And if you push him out to the top of the racetrack, you're going to get into the marbles. The car is going to get slickened up, and it's ultimately going to be harder for you to get around. A nice look out of the 26 of Jacob Smith, currently running in 3rd, and Smith joined the season a little bit late last season, was able to put around some good runs, has been through the top 5, top 10, has definitely put very strong motors, and I think for now, Francisco, we can correlate Jacob Smith with this scheme right here, this Busch scheme that was ran by Kevin Harvick. He's definitely been the staple of using this scheme throughout most of his league races, especially in this series, and I think very easily when we see that car in iRacing, we can easily correlate to the driver, the 26, his performances. Still looking for that first win, but ultimately he's shown that although he was only a driver that made most of or a handful of races last season, he was definitely one to be reckoned with.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those cases where you look at a car and you're saying, oh, it's this guy because it's just such a standout. It's like me with the Red Bull cars, Kenneth. It's when you see it, you know who it is, you know what you're getting. And drivers like Brian M. Smith as well with the Furniture Row 78 car that Martin Truex Jr. used to run. It's the same deal with him. You see this car and you know who you're talking about and you know what's going to happen when you mention this guy in a race. He's doing exactly what you expect him to do out here leading laps with a big lead. So when there's guys that have a prominent car that sort of correlates to who they are and they consistently run it, then it sort of becomes a stample, a trademark. It's like Jeff Gordon's Rainbow Warrior car, Dale Earnhardt Senior's Black 3. So it's schemes like that that really connect with a driver.
Especially if you run a scheme so many times, you don't really change up the game. It makes it so much more eye-popping. And I think I can reference your favorite driver, Kyle Busch. When you see an M&M's car, you know it's Kyle Busch. You know what driver's behind it. You know what team it is. You know what manufacturer it is. You know what number it is. You know the whole stigma surrounding the entire car, the driver, and the legacy behind that car and what it has done on track. So with many paint schemes, you can say, and I think you can also change it to the 22 Joey Logano, that Shell Pennzoil car that they've had since I believe 2011 with AJ Allmendinger and Kurt Busch, that it's become so notable. And well, it's mostly become signified with Joey Logano, but you can also correlate Kurt Busch's run with it. You can correlate AJ Allmendinger's run with it. It's right in front of the leader. We have a caution coming out, and it is, I believe, the 22 of Eric Schaffer, who again gets involved in an incident. And that was right in front of the path of Brian M. Smith. He was looking to complete lap 69. And this time, Eric Schaffer again involved in a caution. We'll see if this is just a solo spin, although he was all by himself on this front. So I believe it just might have been the case. Right on board with him, see exactly what happened.
See here, coming off of turn number 2. And it's that transition. It gets a little bit loose beforehand, but once he goes through that transition, it was very difficult for it to come out. And you see right there, almost slid back up into the racetrack, but thankfully he locked the brakes up and was able to slow down enough to where he can release and go back below the apron. Here's the view from your race leader. He sees the smoke up ahead, and a bit of a brown pants moment for him.
He actually didn't even lay off the throttle. I guess he knew that Schaffer was going to stay under the racetrack. He was going so slow that he wasn't reverting back up. So Smith kept it in the throttle, kept it composed, and he's still your race leader, and he's going to get bunched up with the rest of the field. But I think for everybody, Francisco, the call is 4 tires and fuel. First long run of the night. Calls for the first yellow flag pit stop for most of the field.
It's actually the second for most of the field. We saw them come in on that lap 40 or so caution. So they did get a pretty decent run there for them. So now they're going to use their second set of tires, which is around that mark that we referenced a little bit earlier. They're so far on schedule with their tire set, so they're not exactly on pace to sort of burn them up by the end. But you saw right there, just for a brief second, the 90 had to back up in his pit stall. That might cost him some spots, but up front, no major changes, as we actually do have the 16. I believe Roberts may have done some strategy to take the lead or has stayed out. Two tires. And it's much like what we saw yesterday in the ARCA race. You're not doing this exactly to win the race on lap 72, but you're doing this so you can get information that you can use at the end of the race, depending on what position you're in and what your goal is. It might end up working out in your favor, but that's why it's best to do it now while it's still early and you can recover in case it goes south. What's this? Wait, yeah, he's gonna come in with the pace car. That puts Kyle Benson in the lead. Oh, they're wrecking. That was an interesting sequence of events there, Kenneth. I'm not sure what he was doing pitting coming to the green. I'm not sure if that was planned. I'm not sure if something happened to where he had to come into pit road that time. Maybe a penalty. Who knows? But that really shook up the restart for a brief second, and it really hurt the 26 of Smith, who's down now in fifth, but he does have damage on that race car, as you saw Kyle Benson trying to put the pressure on Brian M. Smith, trying to see if he can take the lead away. Oh! That far sideways and able to keep it under control. Shades of Josh Patterson from not too long ago in the Bunge Lawn Care Series at this very racetrack. And it's very difficult to save the car once it's that far sideways, especially with the steering ratios you run here. You run them high, and it's very difficult to save the car without it snapping or without it actually overcorrecting. So it's a fine line, and when you get it that far sideways, you're dancing on that line.
Well, he was dancing all around the exit of 4. That's going to give the lead to Smith back at an advantage of about half a second. As there's Joe Sanchez defending against Warner and Jacob Smith. Kind of a short line of cars here that are within a second of each other. And then you have to look back to Tyler Murray, who's now P6. And a nice battle behind them as Sean Hamilton got around Brandon Banks. Now here comes the 48 of AJ Green, 75 of Nicholas Suzuki. And those Plan B sales cars, I think we saw that sea of blue and white. Especially blue, white, and black. Those Plan B sales, Circle B diecast cars that were dominating at Auto Club at the front with Kyle Benson and Austin Riddy, a handful of others. They're just those colors that you can easily know in that first race. And you could say here at Phoenix, they haven't had as dominant of a night, but that does not mean they're out of it just yet. These guys have been just kind of hanging within the top 10, just waiting to log these laps down. And we're close to the halfway mark, so definitely still a lot more time to make some decisions and push the car a little more.
Yeah, and of course it's lap 80 out of 200. That means we still have 120 laps left in this race. A lot of time for you to figure out what you have to do different and maybe gain some track position and get yourself out of a mess or any sort of chaos that you've been surrounded to this point. So right there, you see Nicholas Suzuki, how far sideways he was. He's going to now get a challenge there by the 90 of Forrester, who gets I am going into turn number 1. 48 now trying to see if he can look to the inside of Hamilton. The third place finisher on last step of the podium, trying to see if he can just get back and have a solid finish coming off that podium.
As the 33 of Warner has caught up to the 55 of Sanchez, so we may end up seeing a pass from the last step of the podium happen in the next couple laps as they're catching lap car Matt Roberts. I'm not exactly sure here why Matt Roberts elected to go down pit road as soon as the pace car went down, because he had some time, he had about a lap extra to go down pit road if he second guessed his decision to take either fuel only or 2 tires. But it seemed as though he elected for pit road, just kind of threw the field off. As the pace car went down, he joined the pace car, was pretty much drafting him to the entrance to pit road. And unfortunately now Matt Roberts has been put a lap down. You see Jacob Smith going by. Not going to take long for Murray and everybody else to continue to put him further a lap down on the racetrack.
Yeah, it was a very confusing moment there for all of us, really. It almost definitely threw off all the drivers as well, seeing the leader come into pit road with the pace car. I mean, you normally don't see that unless it's Mark Martin who pulled off a lap early at the win. So it definitely shocked everybody, and I'm pretty sure that easily could have ended in a big crash. And you saw it was headed in that direction, but they were able to keep it straight and avoided a crash.
So still green as of lap 84. Brian M. Smith up by 2.449 seconds that last time by. And as we're closing in on the halfway mark of this race, how about we turn up the volume and crank it up here on MaxSpeedTV. And around goes Joe Sanchez. You were riding on board with him. He has towed it back to pit road. And as we were cranking it up here on MaxSpeedTV, the caution flies immediately as it happened, and it involved the driver right here, the 55. It was between him and the 26 of Jacob Smith. You were riding on board with the rear end of his Ford Mustang. And Francisco, take us through it. 3 and 4, Smith trying to enter the corner. They both meet and make contact.
Let's see what happened here. We were on board with the 55 looking at the front end. He just comes up a little bit into the 26 and around he goes into the wall. Not exactly sure what was going on there. It looked pretty sketchy, but I'm not going to imply which either driver did. But I was interested in seeing just how far up the racetrack he had gone here, Sanchez. You see, he entered at the very bottom, and as soon as the 26 gets to his outside, he kept drifting up the racetrack, and then at the last second into the wall, and that spun the car. Luckily, no one else involved, but he does tow it, and he is now in the garage.
Unfortunate for the driver of the 55. You were looking at there again on the onboard camera. It looked like he slid up the track a little bit, just aiming to arc the corner, and then got into the 26 of Jacob Smith, and it looked like the contact was minimal, so it didn't seem like the car would get too out of shape. But for Sanchez, it just kind of wobbled a little bit, tried to overcorrect it, ultimately slid up to the outside wall, but it was the pound to the outside barrier that really set things off, spun his car around, and you saw right there, he went fully around. Luckily, no one else involved directly. And the caution comes out at lap 89. See Kyle Benson from second place on pit road. Interesting call here. Is this one to switch things up at the halfway mark, Francisco?
I think he has to try something different than your race leader. If he follows the leader, he's following the leader, as Larry Max says. So what a good time to try something different. It loses all that track position he had, but it might be worth it if we're able to get a sizable run, right? Just do something different. It might end up playing out to where he stays out late and forces the 78 to have to make up ground on a late restart. So it's something different. It's definitely, as a broadcaster, fun to watch, to have to see what he can do to work his way back up through the field. But now that it has happened, now that all this pit cycle has worked out, we'll just have to see how this plays out. Brian M. Smith is going to be your race leader, as he has been for most of this race. Tyler Warner has found himself into the second position. Jacob Smith has recovered up to third. Tyler Murray is in fourth. And AJ Green's in the fifth position.
Shake up in the top 5, shake up in strategy, and all in an effort to get around this guy. Brian M. Smith, your current race leader as of lap 90, aiming at the halfway mark. We'll take a break, but you won't miss a thing from the Phoenix Raceway here for the second race of the 4Wide Racing Cup Series. Back live from the virtual Phoenix Raceway in the second race of the 4 Wide Racing Cup Series here on MaxSpeedTV. Kenneth Bueno, Francisco Bacallao along with you for the ride. Brian Smith again controls the restart as of lap 93, as Jacob Smith, who overtook second ahead of Tyler Warner, is now on his way to defending against pretty much everybody who has now tried to swarm. It's a battle between the top 5. Here comes the 8 of Tyler Murray underneath AJ Green. But Francisco, it has been a wild shakeup throughout the field. You see many drivers enter the top 5, exit the top 5, either through incident, through caution, or through pit road strategy. One of them was Kyle Benson, and he's now back to P12 trying to make up all this ground.
We'll have to see if he's able to make it up and just how quickly can he do it, because everyone's going to start eyeing on this potential strategy to determine if they should come in and take tires or if they should stay out if a lot of the field comes in. So right now, Kyle is running, I believe he's just outside the top 10. Yes, he's in 11th right now. If he's able to get up through the top 10 and start finding his way into the top 5, if this run continues to go as long as it could potentially be, then he can find himself very much at the front end of the field. But I'm not sure that he can find himself ahead of the 78 on this strategy, for the simple reason as laps continue to tick, it's going to get even more difficult, as the tires will then, they don't truly equalize on iRacing, but the advantage wears off. So it won't be half a second a lap if it were on the restart itself versus maybe a 10th each lap once you start getting into the more worn area.
Well, it is an absolute pack from second on behind. You see Tyler Murray, he's trying to get around Colin Forster, who's in a battle of himself with Tyler Warner, AJ Green. Oh, these guys in a long line of cars and just about 2 seconds flat away from where Brian M. Smith is, seemingly walking away from the field. And Smith, we've seen him very stout on the road courses. We've seen him at the 1.5 miles, very, very good. But not often do we see him kind of dominate like this on the short track. As right about there at a turn 4, I think a rare mistake out of Smith. Almost completely whips the car around. But nonetheless, as I was saying, we never really see Smith kind of dominant at tracks like these. You usually see guys like Scott Healy, Kyle Benson, but Brian M. Smith just looking to continue to add on to the column of wins at different venues, and as of halfway mark, he's on pace to do just that, hopefully without those mistakes out of turn 4.
Oh, another one right there. Look how far sideways he is, and it's not necessary for him to be doing this. He's out in the race lead, a lot of clean air, and he's pulling away, so he does not have to push the tires this much and risk potentially throwing it all away.
How often do you see that? Driving out of the corner completely loose and still pulling away from the field. Loose, I guess, is fast in this case for Smith. Caution, though, will come out. Lap 99, just short of the halfway mark, and this time, unfortunately, it's the 16 of Matt Roberts, who we saw made that peculiar call on the restart to head down pit road. I don't believe too much damage to his Rowdy Energy Camaro, but probably looking for some damage repair. I believe he's already used up the fast repair tonight. Actually, no, he's continued to hold on to it for this race. So I think he's got that opportunity to use it a little bit later, but we'll see exactly what happened. And it was the front straightaway that seemed to be the issue here. Maybe it was the issue for Brian M. Smith, although he could keep it straight. Unfortunately for the 16, not the case whatsoever.
Yeah, turn 4 and just the front stretch area in general has been a trouble spot for a lot of people. It locks it down, taps the inside wall, and that is what brings out the yellow. Yeah, that is a pretty dangerous spot. If Brian M. Smith, we saw when he had to chase the car down, he went all the way down there. So if that were happen at the same time, that would not be pretty. But under caution at the halfway point of this race, Kenneth, so I think it's a good time to go through our race summary.
Well, it is exactly halfway through this race as leaders now switch around. Brian M. Smith is going to hit pit road. So it's, again, we're going to see Smith along with Jacob Smith, AJ Green, a lot of these other guys hit pit road, Benson and Dustin Webb. Will be 2 drivers to stay out this time by. We'll take a look at your race summary. We'll see exactly what's happened since halfway. We've had exactly 100 laps to go, so about another half of this race, and we are set in stone for race number 2. We've had 9 cautions, so very close to double digits here at the Phoenix Raceway. Similar to what we saw last season, it's been consistent in that mark in terms of the yellow flags thrown out tonight. We've had 33 laps of caution. We've only had 2 lead changes to the front of this field. You can count Matt Roberts switch up to the front of the field as one, but technically the first one was the one on the opening lap between Brian M. Smith and pole sitter Brandon T Banks. That's your race summary so far as of lap 101 of 200 here on MaxSpeedTV. Many other drivers still going down pit road. And now this becomes a very different opportunity here because we saw 13 laps ago, Kyle Benson hit pit road under caution while many other drivers didn't. And now he's got some of the older tires in the field along with Dustin Webb, who may serve as a buffer. And as for him, Brian M. Smith, everybody else is behind. And because they have fresh tire power, it could make it a lot easier to get by for Kyle Benson to fall through the field.
And they have better track position than what Kyle did when he tried this strategy. And that's really what it is, because if you pit and you don't lose too much track position, that's a win for you. But if you pit and you come out outside the top 10, that puts a lot of strain on you to have to get a lot of those positions in the initial part of the run before the field starts to spread, because then it will become increasingly difficult to make up those spots. And if the run goes long enough, you might not be able to gain back the spots that you lost before you have to come down pit road again. So he had to stay out this time because he also doesn't want to use an extra tire set, which he has to save for the end of the race, but also because that would have defeated the purpose of his strategy. It would have just put him further behind.
So we'll double up on the restart. Lights are out on the iRacing official pace car. Going to give Kyle Benson the right of way to lead this back to green with Dustin Webb on 32 lap old tires to his inside. He's going to be the one blocking Brian Smith when we get to green flag. Remember, Smith cannot make a move underneath the 73 until they cross the start finish line. Jacob Smith will be on the outside of row 2 with Colin Forster, AJ Green to row 3. Tyler Murray, Tyler Warner, Adam Alashire, Sean Hamilton to your top 10. 9 cautions as of 103 laps. First half of this race already in the books. Less than 100 laps to go from the Valley and the virtual Phoenix Raceway. Ready to get things going as pace car will make the sharp left back down to pit road. Kyle Benson going to have the push from Jacob Smith. Up and away we go, back under green.
And a pretty good start there for Kyle Benson and Jacob Smith. Brian M. Smith, on the other hand, did not get away well. We see him back there trying to battle for the 4th position under fire. That's the first time we see him under fire, but here's Kyle Benson, who's under fire by Jacob Smith for the race lead.
Big move up to the front of the field as Dustin Webb has seemingly lost all track position. And now here comes Jacob Smith with Colin Forrester to assist. Benson to the outside, and new race leader Jacob Smith as of lap 105.
Smiths are destined to lead this race here today. Benson now falling down to the 3rd position, and here comes Brian M. Smith now to his inside. Do remember the 10 is on one of the oldest sets of tires of those in the field. Pitted a little bit before these guys, but it's not as old as the 10 car's tires.
And the 10 just pretty much tanking like an anchor in the deep ocean. Right there goes Tyler Murray to the inside. Still doubled up behind them. AJ Green is in a battle of his own with Adam Alashire. Both of them make contact, and Adam Alashire is going to be able to keep it straight. However, another scary moment into 1 and 2 as they're about 3 wide as Vizzuti almost took it 3.
Very chaotic. The 07 of Hamilton had to back out there, but it drives the 4 up the racetrack a bit. Warner and AJ Green side by side. That's outside the top 5. They're going to be chasing down the 4 or the 10 of Kyle Benson. On board now with AJ Green, who still has to lead room to the inside. But if you look up there, the top 3 are under a blanket. Brian Smith has driven up there to the back of those 2, and he's going to try and take back the lead. But first, he has to get through last week's race winner, the 90 of Colin Forster.
We saw Forrester just controlling near the end, and it took a last lap pass to get to the front of this field as here comes Brian Smith, going to nosedive in 1 and 2, and going to be able to take that spot away easily. So your former race leader now still on the path to regain the dominant run that he's been performing through the first half of this race. And now has Jacob Smith, the other Smith, up in front of him to take this spot away, as they've all 3 have crept up around about a second or so away from guys like Tyler Murray, who's holding P4, and Kyle Benson remarkably holding strong on the top 5, but here comes AJ Green to the bottom side to take it away.
And while this is going on, Brian M. Smith now hounding Jacob Smith for the race lead. Is he going to be able to get by him here? He's going to see if he can set him up for 1 and 2. He's going to stick behind right now in 3 and 4. maybe try and turn down the racetrack, build a run for this straightaway. And right there, you can see it's starting to develop a little bit loose off the corner. He's going to stay behind for now. No moves yet, but he is trying to see if he can pressure the 26.
Gonna be a little patient, make the moves in either corner, gain time to reach checkpoint, and then finally build that run. You saw that methodical movement to the 90 of Colin Forster going into turn 1. Gotta imagine that he's trying to purpose for the same thing here for the race lead. Gonna use the exit at 3 and 4 possibly as an advantage, as a slingshot. Not gonna have the advantage though, as Jacob Smith is able to contend so far with the 78. He's been very close, but Smith is just able to hold on to the race lead for now, possibly through the dog leg. Here comes Brian in the 78.
Smith trying to get to the inside, and he will. Brian M. Smith trying to get his way into the inside. He's showing a nose. He's going to try and get there in the center of the corner, but he's on that line, and it's very slick there, and he's going to lose a lot of ground. You see him very loose off the corner, into the wall.
He's gotten into the wall. You see damage on the right side. Forster had to check up wildly to get away from it. Make sure he wasn't involved in a potential incident. That's going to only allow Jacob Smith to run away. And we saw a slight mistake out of the 78 earlier where he was getting loose off turn 4. And that seems to be the trouble spot now for what was the dominant driver in tonight's action.
But he still hasn't given up. He's still trying to catch the race leader, but he does have that damage on the right front of his race car now. That's going to make things increasingly difficult because now you have aero damage, but also that's going to wear the right front tire out even more. So no immediate problems as far as the tires, but as this run goes, that may become an increasing problem. And we'll have to see, does he choose to take the fast repair under the next caution? Right now, he's actually still catching up to Jacob Smith, which just shows the pace he has, but he cannot afford a mistake like that again. And better yet, now his car won't be as fast as it was.
Well, at least the good thing about a track like Phoenix Raceway is so short in the part that with these cars, even a slightest bit of damage won't necessarily affect you too much aerodynamically just because there's not as many long straights. The only thing that's really going to affect you is possible engine damage, but as for the 78, no reports of that whatsoever. Just slight taps to the outside wall and a little bit of damage on the nose of that Toyota Camry, but it hasn't affected his speed, and he is still putting that fire to the 26 of Jacob Smith. And Jacob has to notice this a little bit as a big dive to turn 1. That's going to close the gap in significantly as Smith gets wildly loose off turn 2. And now here comes Brian Smith to the inside.
Side by side into 3 again. Will it work this time for the 78? A big dive. He's going to get on that line once again, but he drifts up so that he can have a little bit of better grip. The advantage goes to Jacob Smith. He's on that outside, very loose. He leads the lap once again, but they're entering 1 and 2 side by side. This gives the 78 now the advantage.
Both Smiths battling for the top spot in this race. That could allow, though, for guys like Colin Forster to slowly put himself back into this mix. As Jacob using the banking in 1 and 2, using that kind of disadvantage all the way in the yellow line in 3 and 4. But I believe this time, Brian will be able to clear. Almost about there and almost got a little bit loose as Jacob still contending up top. It is still dead even for the race lead at the start-finish line.
Yeah, Jacob Smith actually led that lap, so he went from almost getting cleared to leading that lap, and now look at this run he got off of turn number 2. The 78 struggling on that inside. He has the nose in front of Brian M. Smith, and Brian M. Smith is on that line once again, trying to run that Harvick line, but look how far loose he gets. Sideways off the corner. That's going to allow Colin Forster now to try and make a move.
And guess who's in it now? Third place Colin Forster to the inside of Brian Smith. Almost contact, mere inches between the two. And Forster able to hold on to third. Smith able to survive still for second, although the gap now up to 0.3 of a second. And all the more while they continue to battle on. Fourth on back will get this run. Tyler Murray now put him in the ring as well.
That's just inviting everyone further back because they're starting to stack up there. They're battling so hard and the pace is dropping between those two that it's starting to allow those further back who aren't battling each other to start closing in. Naturally, they're saving their tires because these guys are using them up, trying to pass one another.
Especially when you're on the outside, inside, you're trying to put it on the throttle in 3 and 4. That could easily either make your car completely tight or completely loose, depending on where it is. We've seen loose situations out of both of these guys. We saw Smith get a little bit tight. That's exactly why he slammed the outside wall. But as these guys fight tooth and nail for this position with about 80 laps to go, Forrester, Murray with clean cars, AJ Green, maybe even Tyler Warner back to P6 a couple of seconds back. Just reels them in closer and closer. And while the top two burn up their stuff, it's only third on back that just continues to play it safe, continues to watch this battle from the front row, and then they're able to pounce on these guys, let's say if their tires completely fall off. However, for Jacob Smith, this battle is definitely not over whatsoever. You ride on board with Brian Smith, ride on board with Jacob Smith. Look at the distance between the two as they use the dog leg once more. And Brian gonna look to the outside, potential crossover, gonna shut the door, not gonna make the pass just yet.
Doesn't decide to take that pass just yet. He's being very patient, and it takes a lot to be this patient. Right there, you see the 26 get a little loose. He's going to maybe look on the inside, not going to take it. Not yet anyways, but the 78, even with that right front damage, is still showing speed. And I think that damage is helping us, the broadcasters, have a better show, because if he had no damage on that right front, he would have easily gotten by the 26 and started pulling away.
But he has not been able to pull away. The only thing he's been able to do is get to his door, but it has stalled every single time he's done so. A lap car up in front, that's Curtis Kelly. Again, loose goes Brian Smith. That's going to keep the 26 up in the front of this field. Where does Curtis Kelly go as the lap car? Does he let these guys by, or does he try to fight forward? Off turn 2, here Forrester is going to also close in. Tyler Murray is also aiming to try and reel that 90 car back to the fight, as here comes Brian up as Kelly hits the outside wall. Both of them washed up the racetrack. How does the exit fare come into the front straightaway? It seems to be still beneficial for Jacob. And we have a fantastic run for this race lead with less than 80 laps to go.
Middle of this race has really opened up, and Jacob Smith, what a great job he's doing holding off the 78 of Brian M. Smith. And all it took was Smith making a mistake trying to take away the lead, when he definitely showed he was faster, and now he's having trouble getting by him because of that damage from the mistake he made. But look at that, he's still hounding him. Jacob Smith with a moment off four.
And again, just trying to break the draft, swerving all over the place. You ride on board with Forrester, he continues to get closer and closer. It's like a magnet every single lap. Forrester now able to watch this battle as here comes Brian back to the inside. Does the pass stick in at 3 and 4 again? The answer seems to be no. Gonna wash out the track just a little bit. And it seems as though Smith just able to manage that exit. I think that's been the best part for Jacob this entire race. He's done it a couple times with many other drivers. Is the fact that he's just able to make use of that second lane better than many other drivers throughout this event. Especially in 3 and 4, where he's kind of able to pinch the driver down low, force them to use less throttle. And while they're having a bit of struggle trying to keep themselves down there without washing up into the opponent, Smith is just able to roll the corner, slide up the track, diamond it just a little bit, and manage the exit the best way he can.
Yeah, and again, look right there. Jacob Smith actually almost got the wall. It's going to give Brian M. Smith a shot going into one.
Smith to the inside, a little loose on the braking entry. And again, the 26 able to hold on. You see a battle there. I believe that's for P5 or P4 rather. That's Murray and AJ Green. But it is still side by side for the top position. Smith up the track. Jacob trying to block. And again off turn 4. Jacob Smith with the advantage. Forrester still not getting any time.
Forrester, he's gonna get there though eventually. And if those two get even more race here, look who's further back. There you see AJ Green, Tyler Murray. They're all there waiting for something to happen. Tyler Warner behind these guys. The top 6 are within a second of each other, Kenneth.
They are all within a second. It's the closest we've seen it all race long. Smith with a huge send into turn 3. Jacob with a crossover, a little loose. But this time, Brian M. Smith, after many attempts, is finally going to get the race lead. And here comes Forrester for second.
It looked like the 26 was going to be able to complete the crossover, but he got too aggressive with the throttle, and now he's under fire for second. Brian M. Smith just chucked the car into turn 3, and he went up the racetrack, but the mistake by the 26 on the crossover allowed the 78 to get clear. But now Colin Forrester puts himself into second behind the damaged race car of your race leader. And you can still see the 78 is still struggling off the corner. But this is going to be different, Kenneth. He has damage to that race car, so he won't just waltz away with ease. That 90 is going to have a little bit of a better shot in this run.
And now that poses a very big question here, Francisco, just because the fact that the 78 not only accrued damage, but he possibly burned off his rubber. It's 29 laps that they're on this stint. Many of the leaders, apart from some guys like Kyle Benson, many others who took alternate strategies, But for guys like Smith, it's been a long time. It's now crossing the line. 30 laps on a stint. You're probably looking to go down pit road in a little bit. And due to that battling, how much has that affected the grip on this 78 car? And does that still open the door for guys like Forrester, for guys like Green, for guys like Tyler Warner or Tyler Murray to put themselves here, get around that 78, and potentially lead this race for laps to come? There's still a long way to go, so this race can change in any sort of trajectory, and it might not be with that 78 up front.
And if this race continues to go green, we do have potential green flag pit stops that could find their way into this race. We're almost on a 30-lap run for most of these guys, with the exception of Kyle Benson, who's gone almost 50 laps on his fuel run. So Kyle Benson, as we see smoke there, I'm not sure if that was blinking smoke or if someone potentially went down there. And there you see the Ford Alishire actually was sideways. He's going to lose several positions, but he's able to keep it pointed. But Kyle Benson, he has the least amount of fuel of anybody in the field right now. If this stays green, we could see him on pit road sometime within the next 15 laps or so. And if that being the case, maybe he brings the whole field down to pit road. But if that doesn't happen, everybody for sure has to come in within the next 40 laps. So definitely before the end of the race, we could see green flag pit stops.
We're definitely going to imagine that Kyle Benson is going to go down pit road, obviously earlier than everybody else, just because he pitted earlier than most of the field. He's on 44 laps on his stint on his tires, although not a bad job to keep himself well within the top 10. You see he's riding P8 right now. He got around Adam Alishire, who had a little bit of trouble, especially through the dog leg at the exit of turn 2. So although Benson has had significantly older tires in the field, he did get swarmed on one of the most recent restarts, although he's kind of been able to hang in there and just wait until either the long green flag strategy kicks in or a yellow flag comes out so that he can come down pit road and get a set of tires. Remember, there's 6 exchangeable tires in the pits that was given by the officials and Tyler Murray before this race started. So you also have to keep that in mind, how Benson's going to play this strategy, either to save a set for later on in the race where he may need it, or in any other case where he could just have fresh tire power while the rest of the field is at a deficit.
And that's going to impact a lot what these guys do, because if you make a green flag pit stop and there's 20, 25 laps to go, now do you ask yourself, do you take 4 tires on that last set of pit stops? Because you're someone like Colin Forrester, if you're this far behind Brian Smith, you might be able to pass him on pace, but you have nothing to lose. And you already have that race win, and if you pit that late anyway, maybe you stop for a shorter amount of time and try to hold them off then.
Seems right on board with last week's winner, Colin Forrester. Still to P2 right now, hanging strong against AJ Green and just keeping himself within a half a second of Brian M. Smith. And this is exactly what I talked about, Francisco, that Smith in that exchange with Jacob probably burned off his rubber a lot more than he anticipated or that he wanted to. And unlike many situations where Smith is just kind of able to walk away from the field, he's not able to do so right now. And Forrester has just been keeping himself there, holding strong, keeping that 78 on the windshield by a good amount. That last time by, Forrester was faster at a 28.382.
Caution.
But a caution comes out. And it might have been Christopher Bishop, who's down pit road. Maybe he took a tow. Seems to be no other driver in trouble right now, so I believe the cause of accident was the 42 Christopher Bishop. We'll try to look at the replay, see exactly what might have happened. And second time we see a flip, Francisco.
Ooh.
Loose off turn 2, wall grab, and completely flips over end before laying on his side. That's exactly why the tow was initiated.
Oh my, what a sequence of events there. I mean, he entered turn 1, he seemed to be fine. A little aggressive on the throttle, a little bit loose, easily catches, and then the wall just grabs him and throws him around, much like Hulk did with Loki, and that was not pretty.
It was not pretty whatsoever, and Bishop on his side. That's why you saw him towed to pit road. He, I don't believe, has a fast pair left on his race car. Due to some contact a little bit earlier in this race. See exactly what happens. While the field is going to head down pit road, does Brian M. Smith use the faster pair this time by? We'll find out. And Francisco, everybody's down for service this time by.
I think Brian may use it, and I say that because it'll be less time spent in his pit box, and he might feel confident in his ability to not accrue any more damage. So I suspect the 78 will try to use that fast repair so he can keep the lead and get that pace back. So we'll just have to see as he pulls into his box. Will we see that right front buff out? I don't see it buffing out, so he is not taking that fast repair.
I believe he's just going to keep it for the rest of this race. Remember, there are still 60 laps to go, so anything could happen, and Brian M. Smith may have some more opportunities to burn that fast
and he doesn't
off.
take repairs.
A nice battle off pit road, though, for second. It was a complete photo finish to the pit road exit line between Jacob Smith and AJ Green, but Jacob Smith, I believe he burned off his fast repair as of this pit stop. And Jacob Smith going to head to the front with AJ Green. Significant damage to the front end. Not sure where that came from. He's going to come out third. Forrester's going to fall 2 positions to fourth. But Brian M. Smith going to look to continue on his way to a first win in this 4 Wide Racing Cup season. And now the question is, how does he handle this on fresh tires against guys like Jacob Smith, who have been so good? Guys like AJ Green, Forrester, Warner, guys who could also come into this mix, who have been prevalent within the last segment of this event.
And look, Brian Smith still has that damage on the right front, so that hasn't gone away yet, and he didn't sit there and take some of those repairs, so he still has basically the same damage he did before. So that 26 has got to pounce on this restart if he wants to get back around the 78 and try and see if he can hold him off for the rest of this race.
We'll just have to see. There's Dustin Webb staying out of pit road, but he's one of the lap cars, so not necessarily going to have an effect. He's going to get the wave around this time by. And we'll have Brian M. Smith, Jacob Smith, the 2 Smiths again on the front of this field. I don't think we were going to have this throughout this event, but kind of getting a little confused here because when we mentioned Smith, there's 2 of them. So we have to see which one is a 78, which one's a 26, which one's Jacob, which one's Brian. And I think especially to that last part where they were both side by side for a handful of laps, it was a little bit tough to discern which one was the Smith that we were mentioning. And we may end up seeing the same thing happen again, as Brian M. Smith is going to choose the outside on this next restart.
I think it's the same thing that the real-life commentators deal with when talking about the Busch brothers.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can probably ask Rick Allen how it was to commentate Kurt versus Kyle, 2020 Kentucky, where they were side by side, or 2019 rather, that was before the pandemic, but where Kurt Busch
and just recently at Atlanta.
Yeah, recently at Atlanta, where they had Ross Chastain come in the middle to commentate that between 2 Busch brothers with the same last name. You always kind of have to refer them as the first name or refer to them as their number or their car, their team. It's the same thing we're seeing with the Smith guys here tonight. They're going to be side by side on row number 1 when we come back to the green flag. As pace car makes its way down, Brian M. Smith to the control. And as of the front straightaway, the 78 able to make it through to turn 1 by a car length or so. Jacob Smith behind him. Colin Forrester to the top 3 as they fan out back to turn 2.
Jacob tried to get a good launch there to see if he can challenge Brian, but unable to really make an effort on his first lap. Closer to Colin Forrester than he is the race leader. So right now, Brian M. Smith looking pretty decent off the restart, but he still has work to do because that damage has not left, so he won't have that massive pace advantage that he once did. And there you see Kyle Benson, who's sort of been gone in this middle portion of the race, trying to see if he can recover some positions while he's on equal tires now. That really saved Kyle Benson because he was probably 10 laps or 15 laps away from making a green flag pit stop.
We pointed that out, the fact that if a yellow came out, it would be the prime position for Benson to be on equal footing with everybody else. And that seemed to have been the case. Yellow came out at the right time. Benson was able to get 4 fresh tires along with all these guys up front. And now Benson, who was running in P9 on the oldest tires in the field before the caution flew. Now Kyle Benson is on the same strategy, now in the top 5. And got around Tyler Murray, Tyler Warner as well for position. I'm going to try to chase down AJ Green this time by. But as of right now, Brian Smith, you see the gap between Jacob and Brian. 78.26, now in about 0.6 of a second. I think the fresh tire is definitely helping Brian in this case, like it has been all night long. And coming to the final 50 laps of this race, Smith looking to get his first win this season. As here's Kyle Benson underneath AJ Green.
Benson trying to take advantage of the restart right now, trying to gain all these spots back, because if he's able to recover back up into 3rd or so and gets another late caution, he might be able to challenge Brian M. Smith. We saw that, oh, he's going to get loose underneath the 48, but he saves it. If he's able to get up there, Kenneth, he's shown that he can compete with the 78. So now that the 78 is a little bit stricken on speed, if he's able to get up there and restart next to him, it might just work out for him.
Definitely, that inside in 3 and 4 has been rather dangerous for anybody going side by side. It seems like you really want to be in that second lane to get the most momentum, unless you just completely send it in on the braking zone. And in a way, I kind of wish that iRacing had the option, the grip, to use the inside apron in 3 and 4, because in real life we see that happen. Well, technically in real life it's 1 and 2. In the sim, it's still 3 and 4 with the start finish line being still on that main straightaway instead of being at the exit of turns 1 and 2 in the sim, in that first 10 to 11 degree section of banking. That drivers here in this flat center of the track have used the apron to be all the way down there and get all the grip. We see that New Hampshire, especially most recently with the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series. Kind of wish that drivers can amplify that apron in 3 and 4 here in the sim in this track, but obviously not the case, and I think many just don't really want to be next to that yellow line unless they're all by themselves. That's really been the case so far here tonight.
Yeah, they're trying to stay above that yellow line. That's really where the grip is on this current track scan. I hope that when they do the rescan, Kenneth, as you mentioned, that they add a bit of grip down there to that flat part of the racetrack. Not make it the fastest, but definitely make it a viable option, and it give it a certain characteristic with tire wear and just when it'll be faster to use it, like on a restart versus once you get long into a run, because obviously on old tires it might not be effective to go down there, but on a restart you should definitely have the ability to go down there and expect to have some sort of grip to make a move. But you see there, almost contact between the 10 and the 48. They're battling for that 4th position. Kyle Benson trying to be as aggressive as he can to make these spots up.
I believe something has happened to the driver of the 78.
Oh no!
Brian M. Smith. We saw him with some connection issues a little bit earlier while we were riding on board with this guy, the 26. And it seems as though for Brian M. Smith, connection issues have taken over. And Brian M. Smith, who had dominated this race since the drop of the green flag, he will be out of it and will most likely finish just inside or outside of the top 20. As there's a wreck on the front straightaway. Might have been AJ Green involved.
Kyle Benson.
Kyle Benson with a hit. A couple of drivers scrambling to get around. And we'll try to see what happened. And that was instantaneous on the front straightaway. And it did involve, frankly, the 10 and the 48. Watch this as they came out of turn 4.
We saw them almost hit a lap ago. Benson loses it on the inside, and around they go on the front straightaway. That reminds me so much of a wreck here in the Truck Series. I believe it was between Johnny Sauter and Eric Jones off of that same corner there. That looked very similar to that. And a pretty big wreck on the front straightaway. I'm surprised there weren't more cars involved than what there were. But either way, you can see right here, the 10 slides up in the middle of the corner, pushes the 48 just a tad, tries to be aggressive on the throttle. A little bit of a hit, another hit, and around they both go. Oh, and Warner gets a piece.
Nowhere for Tyler Warner to go, although he was already on the brakes, so I think the impact won't be too significant. I believe there was some other contact, as it might have been Sean Hamilton. You see him there. Oh, almost hit the 34 Lance Hill as he was trying to go around him. And a contact between some of the main drivers that's going to force many down pit road, which does include Kyle Benson, who is now head for pit road. Adam Alshire is going to join him. A couple other drivers are also going to make their stops as well. That's Curtis Kelly, Michael Newbraw, some of the lap cars here tonight. They're also going to make their stops. Tyler Warner, he's going to make a stop to hopefully repair his machine. Not going to burn out the fast repair, doesn't look like. He's going to stay down pit road for that damage repair. And I believe Jacob Smith might have also made a stop down pit road. Actually, no, he's going to stay out, so he's still going to be in the lead. Kind of scoring and timing kind of messed things up a little bit, so it looked like Smith was not in P1, but he did stay out, and he is currently on 14-lap old tires along with everybody up until P9. And then you'll find AJ Green, who has just pitted. He has burned his fast repair, and you can see the damage repaired. Clean Chevrolet Camaro for him. That's so unfortunate.
Yeah, I think Benson took a fast repair there as well. I'm not sure what the damage on his car was, but I mean, now's the time to use it. This might be the last time you come down pit road, and if that is the case, you do not want to regret. You don't want to regret having not used it, because I've been in the situation where you try to hold on to that fast repair because you think it's not over, and it turns out being the very last run on the race, and you regret not using it because it could have really been to your benefit. So perhaps he may have pulled the trigger on it right now. And of course, having someone as competitive as Brian M. Smith out of this race, that makes it a lot easier for these other guys to try and win the race for themselves. It does make it more competitive because we've seen all sorts of guys run up into the second, third position behind Brian M. Smith. So now that they're thrusted into this position to potentially battle for the win, that's going to make it a lot more interesting. Kyle Benson will restart, I believe, in the 12th position, and he has about 15 lap fresher tires than most of those in front of him. So a bit of a significant difference, but we'll just have to see how this plays out, because if we get another caution before this end of the race, we'll see if those guys who just pitted stay out on a late dash to the finish, or if they also come in and possibly do some pit strategy with these guys.
I like that point about the fast repair where you're just trying to hold on to it, and then there's a moment where you probably could have used it and you didn't because you think there's still more left to go, and then all of a sudden race is coming to an end. Race is already at a point where you can't really afford to go down pit road, and you can't use that fast repair, and then you're kind of stuck with what you have. And it's also in the situation that you can end up in places like Pete Bruni and Christopher Bishop were earlier, where they got spun around, they got into the wall, they got in a situation where their car completely flips over, and then they're forced either on their side or upside down, and they can't control, and they can't tip over their car unless they have some help from somebody else, which usually nobody's willing to give in league races because they don't want to give damage to their own car. And then you have no option but to tow, and you cannot use your fast repair until the required damage is fixed, and that takes a very long time, especially when your car gets flipped over, especially when you have significant damage like we saw with Christopher Bishop, like we saw with Pete Bruni. It's a tough situation all in its own right. But meanwhile, we have a restart now on lap 157. Race leader Jacob Smith to the front of the pack, and look at Tyler Murray. Nice restart. He ends up in turn 1 on the outside of Colin Forster. He's going to take second away.
You can see that coming really with the 26. He backed the pack up way behind the pace car and gassed on it very early while still in the corner. That's going to give him a huge advantage versus the driver on the inside, which was Colin Forster in this case. That allows Tyler Murray to move up into the second position. But look at this melee back here. Kyle Benson with these pressure tires trying to navigate around these guys. Very close quarters racing, but they're managing to stay off each other for the most part. Benson now to the outside of AJ Green, and now trying to chase down Brandon T. Banks. So he's really gained positions on this restart.
It is tough right now for Kyle Benson, who's just trying to swarm his way back up to where he was before that incident. And the cause of the recent yellow is he gets by Brandon Banks. He's now going to work on Lance Hill. There's a small group there up to Colin Forrester. Look how tough things get. He's going to have to wait another couple laps, as I believe there's big contact near the front straightaway. And it is Eric Schaffer again in trouble.
Yeah, it's not been a good night for the driver of the 22. Been involved in multiple incidents. Oh, we got a big incident going into turn 3. Might be deja vu from earlier in the race. We see Hamilton, Schaffer, a little bit of netcode involved. Schaffer lets up trying to allow the 07 to recuperate, but someone behind him did not get the memo, and unfortunately got into the back of the 22, and that's what sent the 22 around.
Ken MacArthur behind the wreck. See Curtis Kelly gives that nudge to the 22 where they were checking up. AJ Green also gets a bit of the damage. See Sean Hamilton in the 07. A little bit nowhere to go as they all make contact. This is, I believe, the second time that 3 or more cars have had an issue in the middle of 3 and 4. We saw it earlier with Matt Roberts a little bit in this race. That became a cause for yellow. And it's happened again with some of them being the same drivers. There's Ken MacArthur going down pit road. We saw his on board just a little bit. And now we are under 40 laps to go here from the Phoenix Raceway. So now it becomes crunch time, Francisco, and you pose a very different question here. If you're guys like Kyle Benson, Adam Alshire, Curtis Kelly, these guys who pitted 6 laps ago versus everybody from 1st through 5th who have pitted 20 laps ago, does this now give you concern on how much you have left in terms of tire sets in the pits, or is this still business as usual until, let's say, the final 20 to 15?
I think they've been pretty safe with their tire sets. I think even the likes of Kyle Benson still has an extra set sitting there, and I'm pretty sure most of the field up front has another 2 sets. So 2 sets or 40 laps, very safe condition. But even if you have the 1 set after just using one now, I think you can go to about lap 180, 185 or so and still be good, put on your last set right then and there and not have to really be overly concerned about tires. So I don't think tires, fortunately today, they haven't been too much of a concern.
Well, it hasn't been a concern for Jacob Smith, who is trying to look for his first ever 4Wide Racing Cup Series victory. Colin Forster looking for his second straight after Auto Club. Murray also looking to be a multiple-time winner. Nicholas Vizzuti looking for another win as well to kind of cap off some of the wins that he captured last season. Lance Hill, rookie, looking for his first. He's got a completely beat-up car. He's already used up the fast repair, although he's still been rather quick. So even if he doesn't get the win, I think having a car like this and still finishing in the top 10 is a win in any driver's book. Kyle Benson looking to grab a win of his own from P7, or P6 rather. He's got 7-lap-old tires. Freshest tires throughout the top 10 so far, along with everybody behind him. And it is a battle of many different competitors after the storyline that Brian M. Smith was looking to be dominant, was looking to continue his dominance. But internet connection issues have now set him into a DNF position. He's going to finish at least 21st in this race. Unfortunately, many laps down after what was a very crediting effort of that Toyota Camry. And hopefully we get to see him next week try to defend his win from the Brickyard next Wednesday. And of course, a reminder that 4Wide coverage continues next week, of course, from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the 4Wide Racing Cup Series. That'll be next Wednesday, 9:10 p.m. Eastern, over here on MaxSpeedTV and the YouTube channel. But before that, we'll have coverage from the Iowa Speedway for the ARCA Series. That'll be race 3, and we'll see if TJ Bursky can go 3 in a row, or see if anybody else can take that title away from him. That coverage also starts at 9:10, but that'll be over on the K1 Racing Network YouTube channel. Lots to look forward to in the 4Wide Racing Cup Series. Still a long way to go in the season, and a long way to go here from the Valley, where Jacob Smith leads us back to the green on lap 163.
Another great start for the leader of the race, just able to pin the guy on the inside and make him have to spin the tires a little bit, and that just gives a massive advantage to really get a good sizable lead and just not have to worry about somebody lunging into this corner. Colin Forster settling into that second position, but you see right back there, Nicholas Vizzuti has found himself into the third position, and Kyle Benson has already put himself up into fourth.
There's a fresh tire power that's working for Benson and the gang, but Vizzuti now up to third. It's been the highest we've seen him all race long. Just the question is, how long can he defend against Kyle Benson before Benson ends up taking this over? However, still close for the race lead. Colin Forster now going to put the pressure over on Smith. This will be the second time we see Jacob having to defend against somebody who's looking for that position in the top spot on the racetrack. This time Forster not the run out of turn 4 that he had hoped for. And Kyle Benson now looking for that spot as he almost completely sent it to the 75. He's going to wait, but before the caution comes out.
Yeah, it seems like anytime we get any sort of momentum, it gets interrupted by a caution flag. But right there you see slow on the front stretch was the 97 of Ken MacArthur. Let's see what may have happened here. It possibly occurred off of turn 4, and indeed it was. You can see right there, he was behind Brandon T. Banks and Brian M. Smith, who's actually rejoined the racetrack right there behind him. But the 97 just gets loose off the corner. A little bit of a tap with the left front of that 78, but he was already on his way sideways.
Very well on the way to get shipped around. You see Brandon T. Banks, he also got loose. It was a small tap by Brian M. Smith that sent him around. But yeah, on another note, good to see that Brian M. Smith is back on the racetrack, although he is in P20 9 laps down. So it definitely was a connection issue, and that's something you don't want to see in any aspect of online sim racing. That's one of the gremlins. Apart from hardware issues, let's say if your wheel disconnects or your wheel breaks, your pedals break, something happens to your rig system, your computer can also suffer a lot of issues. But online connectivity, that's obviously the main appeal of iRacing, online competitive racing with other people, but sometimes the connection isn't as well, or sometimes things happen, power outages happen, internet outages happen. Something could strike you at any moment, and unfortunately that could take a driver out of contention, much like it has with Brian M. Smith tonight. And I believe within the next 30 laps of this race, it's going to take a miracle for Smith to get back into competition in this race, let alone gain all the laps that he had lost, and it's 9 right now.
Yeah, unfortunately for him, I don't think he's going to be getting them all back. I know that there's some leagues that if you have connection issues. Whenever there's a caution, they'll give you wave around so you can get them back, since it's not really something, since you didn't really lose those laps on a race deal, like you didn't crash and fall 9 laps down trying to repair. It was something not of your control. Typically, there are leagues that do that. I don't think that's the case here, which is unfortunate for his case. But, internet troubles, nothing new. They've been around as long as the internet's been around, and they always will be around. It's just the downside with all the software and electrical things that go into making internet and online communications possible. And there's always that chance where it'll fail, even if it's for a split second. It doesn't have to last forever for the connection to be broken, and you end up 9 laps down, just like the 78 has.
Unfortunate for the 78 Smith. Looking for another win in this series, where last season he was an entrant earlier, but I believe that was not eligible through the attendance factor, which kind of kept him out of the playoffs, kept him out of the championship hunt. But if he had made it, if he was eligible to make the playoffs, he definitely would have been a force to be reckoned with, along with guys like Kyle Benson, guys like Scott Healy, and many of the big heavy hitters in this championship fight, or the championship fight that was at last season at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Something to note, Austin Reedy has missed last race. He missed last night at ARCA at Phoenix, and tonight he's also missed this race, so he's going to lose a plethora of points. Unfortunately, he was going into this race P4 in the point standings, only 8 points shy of Colin Forrester, who had gotten his first win. It was -6 with Eric, 22. AJ Green was -7. Kyle Benson, of course, his 4th place finish got him there, and then Austin Reedy actually was in the top 5. He's tied with Kyle Benson right now for P4 in the point standing. So hopefully we get to see Austin Reedy back in action next week. And remember, it's still early in this season, so even if you lose points tonight, won't necessarily mean that your playoff hopes are completely over. Still got a chance to win, still got a chance to gain all those points back. And hopefully Austin Reedy can do so in both series, in the ARCA series and in the Cup series, where he was strong at Auto Club in both races. So we'll double them up once more. We'll come back to green flag racing at lap 170, so around 30 laps to go left. Telemetry says if we stay green, we'll be about 15 minutes away from the checkered flag being waved and a winner being determined, as Jacob Smith will lead them from the outside of your first row, Colin Forrester, to the inside, Kyle Benson, Nicholas Suzuki, your row number 2, Adam Alashire, Curtis Kelly, your row number 3. The rest of the field to the top 10 as follows: AJ Green, Lance Hill, Brandon Banks, Sean Hamilton in the 07. Green flag back in the air. Jacob Smith leads them back to turn 1.
And another great start for the race leader, once again able to get far ahead in front, but this time it's going to matter, because look who has worked his way up in a second. The 10 of Kyle Benson on these fresher tires. It's really worked out well for him despite all these cautions, Kenneth. And right now he has the opportunity to go for the race lead on the 26.
Remember, he still has the freshest tires out of anybody in the top 5, apart from guys like Adam Alashire, who's making his move on Colin Forster right now to turn 1. So it is all Benson just trying to hound this 26. Good exit off 2. We'll see how he manages the dogleg. He's going to use it to his advantage. Going to peek his nose in. Does he dive to turn 3? The answer is no. Going to back it up a little bit. But Benson now in prime position to take this lead away. But just not yet, as Adam Alshire got a little bit loose. That puts Forster back in the 3rd. But Smith has to worry about the black Pennzoil Chevrolet Camaro behind him as Benson tries to catch back up.
And you can tell the 26 is using a lot more of his car to try and keep him behind. It's go time. Tires are going to matter. Of course they will. But you have to hold the race lead at all costs. You hope you can hold them off as many laps as you can, and hope that if there's a caution soon down the road, that everybody also has to come in up to pit road so that the track position stays on your side. So this is going to be an intense battle. The 26 is not going to just let that 10 go by.
Definitely not. But caution gets waved as Smith got really loose off turn 2. But he got saved by the bell, and unfortunately, Brian M. Smith gets involved in this. Tyler Murray also has damaged his car, completely skewed on the racetrack.
Had to a big hit for it to be like that.
And it was a good night for Murray, too, up until this point. As his car tries to lean across the racetrack. We'll see what happens. It was a big slam on the front straightaway for both contenders here out of turn 4. And it actually started with Brian Smith. Got loose. spun it around, and as he was hitting the
Oh.
wall, went back up the racetrack and slammed into Murray. Murray had absolutely nowhere to go. Right on board with him. 78 comes up the track. Big hit for the 8. That's suspension damage easily.
Yeah, and it's really terrible for that to happen. I mean, he got clipped in the right rear just as the 78 was going spinning like a top. We'll see here, looking back from Brian M. Smith, he gets loose off the corner and then he overcorrects it, slams into the wall, has no control of where his car is going to go, and into the 8 of Tyler Murray. But let's see if we can look back from Tyler Murray in a slow motion to see if we're able to see just how close the 78 was to hitting him, because it was very close to that right rear of his. He was going along. Oh, he cleared the wreck. I mean, the front of his car went by the 78, but the right rear just barely got clipped, and that's what sent the 8 flying into the inside wall. So we'll see if we can get a look of just how close it was for him.
We'll see if we can get this look here. This is the front straightaway. You'll see the 8, that camo and yellow 8 machine right next to him. There goes the 78 completely flying over. Right, I think right there, the contact to that. I think the left rear he gets. I don't see it bent here on the screen. Essentially there, especially there. You don't see the car completely bent over to the point where the suspension's all messed up, but you see the 8 completely spinning around. And at that point, it doesn't look like the suspension damage is too apparent. But obviously, you can see it right there as he's trying to get back up to speed. That car is definitely not fit right suspension-wise. It doesn't even look like he's turning the corner. Looks like he's completely facing the outside wall.
You can see the tires. They're turning full left.
Yeah, they are all the way to the left. So it might have just been the rear tires that got hit. And that might have been the cause of the concern here for Murray as he gets his faster pair. So he will stay on the lead lap, although he'll be P17, so that's going to mire him back through the field. But that will put Adam Alashire to the race lead. We saw a pit call by pretty much most of the drivers in this field, including Brandon Banks, Jacob Smith, who was the race leader, Kyle Benson, Colin Forrester. And as Adam Alashire, Sean Hamilton, the 22 of Eric Schaffer, and Dustin Webb, they all stay out. So this now puts an entire wrench in the strategy that everybody else was employing, because now these guys are staying out. They've got a strategy of their own.
Yeah, and we saw also, very notably, Kyle Benson lost spots to those in his same pit sequence. He was behind the 26, but now he's several spots behind Jacob Smith. So that's going to make things very interesting for them as they try to work their way up through this field. But look how far back they are into this field, Kenneth. It's going to be very difficult. Possible. We've seen tires really show their significance here today, but he's going to have his work cut out for him. They're all going to have their work cut out for them. But with just 23 laps to go when they take this green flag, nothing's going to be a given.
Well, nothing's going to be guaranteed either. In the final 30 laps of this race, as of lap 177, Adam Alashire will be your new race leader, followed by Sean Hamilton, Dustin Webb, Eric Schaffer, Tyler Warner to the top 5. And again, outside line chosen by the control car. It's been the efficient way to start on every restart here tonight, and we'll see if Alashire can make the most out of it on some of the oldest tires in this field. Pace car comes down to pit road. Alashire on the gas. Will this be the last yellow? We'll have to find out. Green flag back in the air. Alashire to an advantage to turn 1. Almost 4 wide as Jacob Smith makes contact with Ken MacArthur, and they're wrecking in turn 1.
Big crash in turn number 1, and you just saw it as it went out of frame. Jacob Smith was trying to be aggressive with those 4 tires, and it unfortunately cost him. Look at Kyle Benson way after the crash, trying to nurse his way around, trying to not pick up any damage, but he actually has no front end damage right there. You see the 16 not having a front clip, but no hood on the 10. Let's see what happened there. I mean, we saw the 26 go for a move down the inside and ran out of room and got into the inside wall. That sticks out going into turn number 1. You see it here now, trying to be aggressive with the 97 of MacArthur and make contact into the inside wall, and it just funnels down. You see everybody going up the racetrack.
And you saw it there in the rear end of the screen as they were coming back to turn 1. It's just the 26 tried to get under the 97 and slightly made contact actually before he gets right underneath him. And then that collects everybody. Just collateral damage here. It's like dominoes falling over. You see 75 Azuti, he tries to avoid, but he gets caught up in it. Kyle Benson gets caught up in it. Curtis Kelly, unfortunately, gets a piece of this as well. Benson, who was trying to work his way back up to the field, unfortunately gets caught up as him and AJ Green make contact. They both slam the outside wall respectively. And Jacob Smith, trying to be aggressive on the freshest tires, will now have a lot to work on his race car. Just to note, Kyle Benson, he had used this fast repair already. So for him, he pretty much has to stay with the damage on his race car. Same deal for Nicholas Vizzuti. I believe Jacob Smith is also in the boat as well. Vizzuti is already a 1 lap down along with Smith. A lot of these drivers who had had at least some sort of damage earlier are now going to have to deal with it. And it may possibly take them out of this race completely.
You've heard the same before, Kenneth. This changes everything. Well, that was a lot of the field that was on new tires that was involved in that incident. So that really opens the door for the likes of these that are up front with these old tires to have a real chance at a win here today.
Well, we'll see what happens, because I think this in turn helped the case of these guys right here. Alshire, Hamilton, Webb, and the 22 of Schaffer. Since these guys had stayed out, it's now the fact that if cautions continue to wave, it's going to give them, number one, ample time to go down pit road, get some service, and probably not lose a lot of track position. But two, they're not using up as much of their tires as they would if it stayed green. So if this continues to stay under yellow, and if we continue to get a flurry of yellow flags from here on out in the last 20 laps or so, that could give all the advantage to these guys up front who had made that call to stay out the last time we had a yellow. So ultimately, this will be the game-changing moment to see if we can get another winner here before this race is all over. It's been a wild one here at Phoenix Raceway. Again, complete opposite to what we saw with the ARCA race, where it went green for most of the event. Had some yellows, about 3 to 4 through the midway part of the race, but it was ultimately the end that kind of just stayed under green. Everybody was strung out, and it was ultimately the green flag conservation that enabled many of the drivers to hold position or gain position, and for TJ Bursky, it was just holding dominantly up to the front. But for this race in the Cup Series, it is all about chaos, all about pivotal moments, and a race that has changed every single caution, every single lap around this Phoenix Raceway. We've had multiple leaders, multiple dominant drivers, multiple fights for position, and now we have a brand new face up at the front of this field, the rookie, Adam Alshire, with a chance with 19 laps to go to get his first ever 4 Wide Racing Cup Series victory, along with Sean Hamilton. Same thing for the 73, the 22. And then you have to look back to race winners, Tyler Warner, Brendan T. Banks, from last season looking for a second. They're back in row 3. And it all comes down to this. Do we see more yellows? We'll have to find out. Pace car comes down pit road. We'll calm ourselves down a little bit. Turn things up. Crank it up. 20 to go from Phoenix. And again, as we go crank it up, car gets spun around. You saw it on board. That was the 56, Michael Newbraw. That spun, I believe. He may have had some help, but it was all by himself. And he had lost his race car. We'll take a look at the replay. And you saw it there. The in-car camera was coming in at 3 and 4. And that was contact up ahead of the road. That was Murray with the outside wall, but that wasn't the yellow flag. It was just this right here. 56 just loses it, smacks the inside wall, locks up the brakes. And that's the yellow flag.
Unfortunate for Michael Newbraw there. I mean, we were on board with him while that happened and just completely lost it there into the inside wall. The tricky spot of the racetrack, it proved to be so last season, and it's proving to be again the case this season.
So tough for the 56 in Newbraw. Had some showouts in last season's final events, in the final races. Newbraw with the damage. I don't believe it's going to be too significant to affect him. Newbraw right now is the last car sitting on the lead lap. And then you have to get to P15, Christopher Bishop. He's a car last on 1 lap down and probably looking for either the wave round or...
More pitting.
Well, many leaders now are going to start to pit. So, interesting call here by Adam Alashire. Schaffer, Sean Hamilton will stay out. Justin Webb, those two will inevitably stay out on the racetrack. It'll be Lance Hill in P3 on the freshest tires in the top 5. And then you have to get to Ken MacArthur, who's now pitted 5 laps ago. Alashire and the rest of these guys going to take the risk this time with 15 laps to go. Maybe anticipating more yellows, but I think here, Francisco, it's like what I mentioned earlier, that they can pit, take the service, have the freshest tires in the field, and not lose that much track position in turn.
It seems like they might restart somewhere at the edge of the top 10 if that's the case. But right now, amongst the top 7, amongst those that stayed out at least, the one with the freshest tires is the driver in 3rd place right now, that 34. Look how damaged he is. No front end on that race car, and he has the freshest tires of the immediate group he's around. So do not discount what he can do with fresh tires. No front end, no problem.
He's a survivor. He's been a warrior all night long, and he's had that damage for pretty much most of this race. We saw him with a clean car, obviously to start like everybody else. Got into a wreck, burned off the fast pair. Seemed like that was going to be it, and then he gets involved in another crash, and now his car is like this, with the front end completely ripped off, with the car in the back also beat up. But he has still been valiant, still has not given up. And now he's in P3 with the freshest tires out of anybody within the top 3. And within this next restart, he's got an ample chance to take over the top spot, potentially win this race if it comes down to it. We're getting a lot of late yellows here at Phoenix. We've had a lot of yellows overall tonight, and it's just completely changed up the game. So now, if you're these guys staying out, is this worth the call here? Are you anticipating another yellow, or is this just a call to stay out front? This is the last-ditch effort for track position.
I think this is definitely a last-ditch effort for track position. It's mattered, and with all these cautions that it looks like we may be trending towards in these closing laps, it may just be a matter of can you defend, and we've seen guys been able to defend today, so it's not completely out of the question.
Well, we'll see, because we've had yellows come out within 2 laps of green flag restarts most of the time. It happened there with Michael Newbraw, happened there with Jacob Smith. And that large wreck, it was the largest wreck of the evening in turn 1. And now, here comes Sean Hamilton with a chance to lead us back to green. Dustin Webb on his inside, and then you go fresh tire power between Colin Forster and Lance Hill. They're on 13-lap old tires. Freshest tires in the field, goes to 7th place. Adam Alashire and the rest of the guys behind him who have pitted. And we'll see exactly what happens. Cautions have waved. Cautions have bred cautions. But we'll see if we can hopefully stay green for the final 13 or so laps in this race from Phoenix. Cap off the 2nd event of the Ford Water Racing Cup Series. Head off to Indianapolis on a high note. Pace car going to make the sharp left to pit road. Early start again by the control car. Not as good of a start or a jump from Justin Webb. 3 wide behind them as Hamilton leads them back to the first corner.
A great start by Hamilton, and Kyle Benson squeezing around the middle, trying to gain as much track position as he can. But look at Alashire trying to make a move, and he's going to get around with Eric Schaffer. Schaffer spinning. That's going to bring out another caution.
Caution flag again. The 22 gets spun around as Alashire tried to squeeze it 3 wide. And again, we lay under the yellow flag. We've been over double digits for a while, but you'll see exactly what happened to cause this one. And it had to have been Alashire who was making the move down low, but it was mostly the move up top. Ken MacArthur, it was 3 wide, but the 22 and the 4 got met up. They made contact, and that collected the 97 slightly before it spun the 22 around. Here's another look at it as you saw Kyle Benson squeeze it 3 underneath the 97, who was losing position already in the first corner. But it came down right here. 4 comes up the track, 22, they make contact, it's into the 97, but it was the 22 who ultimately paid the price.
He paid the price, but not too much more damage on that 22 for that matter. Fortunately, people were able to avoid him when he was spinning around in that dog leg, so not too significant of a situation there for the 22. Of course, he's going to lose the track position that he had once gained right then and there. So that's probably his shot of a win out of the books. But that gives, once again, an opportunity for the rest of these guys up front. There you see the 90 of Colin Forrester trying to see if he can do what TJ Burst did in the ARCA series and win the first 2 races of that series, trying to see if Colin can do the same here, win the first 2 races of this season. And right now he has some work to do because the 07 Hamilton is in front, trying to see if he can get his first win, and also behind him Dustin Webb trying to see if he can get a win on for himself, and the 34 of Hill as well. So we have a lot of hit very badly, and they do not want to give it up to someone behind them like the likes of Kyle Benson, who's a multi-time winner, a proven champion of the series, or he's not a champion of the series, but he's proven that he can compete for a championship. But these guys definitely want to try and get the glory for themselves today.
It could be the story of first-time winners for Forster, although he's a rookie. To go 2 in a row, I think, would set the tone easily for the rest of this field. And he's been in this situation at Auto Club. He could definitely do it again, especially if this race moves over to green-white checkered territory. And with Forster, with 17-lap-old tires, pretty much half of what Sean Hamilton has put on his set, it could allow Forster to get to the front, be able to win this race, but could have a fight from everybody behind. And Kyle Benson had pushed it 3 wide, the entrance to turn 1. He doesn't have a hood on his race car right now, Francisco. His car's beat up. He burned his fast spare. He probably has engine damage for all that we know, and he is still fighting hard, still relatively fast, and still with a shot to win this thing if it comes down to it.
And so does the 34 of Hill in front of him. No front bumper on that 34 car, and he's in the top 5 as well. So we got several modifieds in this field, and a good chunk of them are up front in this race still. So it's far from over, Kenneth. We never know. Maybe a modified wins this race.
Who knows? We'll just have to find out, but there are still 8 laps left to decide it. When we go green, it will be 7 laps to go. If we get a yellow from here on out, we may end up in either a organic green-white checkered, or we could have ourselves a first attempt at a green-white checkered restart. And of course, we'll explain the rules. We'll get all to it if we get to that point. But we can still complete the last 7 laps of this race under green. They've been very aggressive up at the front of this field, and I can imagine it will not stall out whatsoever, especially when it comes down from any of these drivers trying to get their first ever 4-wide Racing Cup Series victory. Sean Hamilton, Colin Forrester, 2 bow ties, your front row on this restart. Pace car going to make its way down left, maybe for the final time to pit road. Hamilton with a decent jump. We're back under green as Lance Hill moves to second, or actually third, as Colin Forrester tries to chase down the race leader.
Kyle Benson drops a spot down to 5th, and he's actually a couple cars up against the wall through 1 and 2. They're not spinning, but they have gone up against the wall. Still green right now. A lot of chaos through the first couple corners. The field getting very strung out in this first lap.
That was Ken MacArthur, got into trouble, hit the outside wall, couldn't quite identify the other. It says Banks around now in 3 and 4. Again, caution flag waves.
And this has just been a summary of the last 30 or so laps, Kenneth. That middle portion of the race, we had a lot of green flag racing, but the last 30 laps in this race has been absolutely chaotic. And you could just imagine what it's like leading this race. It's very tedious having to sit here, run under caution, knowing that you still have a job to do. And look at the 88, just sent the corner, got into the wall, and around he went. I'm not sure that he thought he was going to make the corner. Try to Carl Edwards move. Actually, we see right here on the restart, the 97 does not go. The 88 going into turn 1 sends the 97 and then goes around the outside, bounces off the wall. The 97 and both of them gets into the wall. Then they lose all this position. And now going into turn 3, it looks like the 88 tries to cross over, go back to the inside, retake that spot on the 57, but absolutely misses it and goes into the corner. And a little tap there, but around he went after completely no breaking the corner, typical of, or similar to Carl Edwards did at Kansas in 2008.
I don't understand the move there, quite possibly.
Neither do I.
And it was difference in braking. We've seen that issue happen before tonight and both last night in the ARCA Series race, where I guess in that case MacArthur was braking a little bit early, wanted to be a little more careful on the restart, while Banks was just trying to send it, got into him, and he got into the wall, and they were able to keep it straight. That was almost a cause for yellow. That's what you saw on the left side of your screen, kind of far out, panned in the shot. when we were coming through turn 1 and 2 for the first time after that restart. But then Banks just completely sends it into the corner with absolutely no regard for the outside wall and just completely knocks it down. So I'm not exactly sure why the move was made, but the caution flag waves, and I think that only puts more pressure on Sean Hamilton. Probably could help him in this case just because he's been able to defend. And again, like I mentioned earlier, if cautions continue to come out like this, then it's only going to freeze the field further. It's only going to allow Hamilton to stay up front if he can keep himself there for about a half a lap or two. And it's only pushing him closer to a first race win, and it's kind of stalling Forrester's run. And it's probably making Forrester a little bit frustrated along with everybody else to the point where they have time to make moves. They just can't make them because the yellow flags keep coming out.
I think we might end up getting a organic 2-to-go restart, non-overtime here, if we do get the lights out this time by. And if that's the case, the 07, he's been able to get good restarts, and that's the advantage of being the leader in this late race situation. You have control, and we see the leader typically get very good launches and clear the guys behind them and sort of make them have to catch him. And if that's the case, you can't overdrive the car. You cannot make a mistake thinking about the win. You have to drive the racetrack, make sure that they can't get by you, because that is what's going to get you the win.
I believe we're going to stack them up here. Aim for 2 to go. Lights are out on the iRacing official pace car. We're going to get 3 to go initially, so I believe this will be organic 2-lap dash to the front, or to the end of this race, with Sean Hamilton in control on his Gatorade Camaro. Colin Forrester to his inside will line up the first row with Dustin Webb, Lance Hill, Adam Alishire, Kyle Benson, Michael Newbraw, Tyler Warner, Tyler Murray, AJ Green to your top 10 so far. We'll see if we can end this race from Phoenix or whether we'll stay a little bit longer. We could easily extend it over 200 laps, but we're still within the range to complete the scheduled distance instead of going to overtime. Sean Hamilton looking for his first win. Forrester looking for his second in a row. Can we go all the way green to the end? We'll find out as the pace car makes its left. The 07 going to control off turn 4. Back under green for what may be the final time tonight.
Alishire going 3 wide already. They're almost panning 4 wide for a second before one backs out. But it looks like Alishire is going to get turned.
Alishire turn in 1 and 2. Big hit to Curtis Kelly. Caution again. Green-white checkered territory. Here we come.
And you can see that coming with how aggressively everybody was trying to pan out for turn 1, and just not enough space for all those cars in which they were trying to enter.
We'll see it here as the Ford machine gets into trouble this time. Alishire had a chance to win this race. And actually, Newbraw had making the braking zone in the corner. Alishire was 3 wide through the middle, and Tyler Warner and Dustin Webb to his outside. Seemed to be everything okay, but it was a disparity there in braking zones as Newbraw tried to send it. Big hit to Curtis Kelly. He had absolutely nowhere to go here. And again, take a look from the aerial shot. The 4 gets hit, and then the big slam to the 71, and Alishire around, and that could potentially seal his race for good as Hamilton staying up front. And now, Francisco, this aims us in a green-white checker territory, so this may be only helping the 07 in the final laps of this race, although the pressure continues to mount.
It just gives you more time to think about what you're going to do. And as a race car driver and having been in this experience, you don't want that time. At this time, you want this race to just end. You want the restart to happen and the 2 laps to go by. If you're going to lose, you want it to happen now. If you're going to win, you want it to happen now. There's absolutely nothing worse than just sitting here under caution, just leading, just knowing that there's still a chance that something could go wrong, despite the amount of times you've gotten it right. You're just waiting for that one thing to happen that's going to take you out of a chance to win. I've been in that position at a race in Dover where there was just a rash of late yellows, and I was in the lead of that race, and on the 3rd and final green-white checkered attempt, the car on my outside was able to get a better restart, and the caution came out half a lap later with him ahead. Even though he had some damage, he just was able to get the restart better, and that's what won him the race. So I know what it's like to be in the position of the 07 right now, but the best thing he can do is continue doing what he's done, nail those restarts with him in control, having been able to pin the guy on the inside and accelerate early. If he can do that once again and just put enough of a gap to where the 90 cannot dive turn 3, because that's the other thing. If the 90 is close enough, who knows if he tries to make an insane dive bomb going into turn number 3. It wouldn't be the first time we've seen that move being made, and it wouldn't be the last.
Probably wouldn't be the last. It's going to allow us to get into green-white checkered dash to the finish. Here's a look at the race summary. We took a look at the race summary at halfway mark, lap 100, and here we are as of lap 201. Going to go over the scheduled distance here tonight from the Phoenix Raceway. We have 3 laps to go. It'll be 2 laps to go when we reach the start-finish line. As soon as the lights go out in the iRacing official pace car, we have had 19 cautions tonight for 74 laps. We've had 8 lead changes so far, so we were at 9. We've added 10 to the total ever since halfway of this event. We could still have more. We're going to run over through the green-white checker rules, and we'll see exactly what happens. So field will double up. You're seeing them right now as the lights should go out in the iRacing official pace car, and it will, so we'll have one more chance to go green here. We'll have a restart with 2 laps to go. Field will obviously come back around, try to reach the start-finish line to the white flag. If we get a yellow flag before we reach the white, then that means we'll restack them up, we'll redouble them, and try it again. We have 3 attempts, so the green-white checkered before this race is concluded, finished. But if we do get to the white flag before a yellow can come out, that means everybody will race to the line. Doesn't matter what happens, doesn't matter. Even if the leaders wreck themselves, caution will not wave. Whoever gets to the start-finish line first will win. So here we go. Hamilton, Forrester, still your row 1. Benson, Hill, your row 2. Dustin Webb, back to row 3 with Tyler Warner. And it is gonna be wild. We'll see if we can complete this attempt. First attempt at a green-white checkered underway from Phoenix. Hamilton to the lead.
Kyle Benson with a good start on the outside without a hood. He's going to challenge Colin Forrester going into turn 1. Forrester, though, with the extra bit of downforce, able to solidify that second place. It's a battle for third, though. Benson on the outside of Hill. They're trying to complete that, as now we see the 07 of Hamilton trying to run for his life to get to the white flag and ensure that this race finishes now.
Lance Hill underneath Kyle Benson for third. He's going to slide up in 3 and 4. 07 a little bit loose. Into the white flag they come. The final mile here at Phoenix Raceway. No yellows will affect the ending of this race. Hamilton washes up the track just a little bit. Forrester trying to come through.
Forrester.
Here comes Forrester through the dog leg to the inside, side by side as they reach turn 3 for the final time in this race. Can Forrester steal it again? Or can Hamilton walk off to win? Final time off turn 4. Forrester wins for the 2nd time in a row.
And they're wrecking off 4. A big crash coming to the line. But how about that, Kenneth? 2 weeks in a row, we see Colin Forrester make the pass on the final lap off of turn number 2.
Unbelievable. And it was a last lap pass on AJ Green to win Auto Club last week. It's a last lap pass on Sean Hamilton to win at Phoenix. And he's not going to take long at all to celebrate. What a way to win it. And what a way to start this season. I don't think he can complain at all with the way the first 2 races have gone for him.
It's been a great start for the driver of Colin Forrester. He's really proven that he's here to win and he means serious business. And starting 2 for 2 is very good on his part. And you can only imagine that it's going to get better from here for him if this is somebody with relatively new experience. But let's get a look at the restart again. We saw the 07. He got a good launch on the initial restart. He was able to get out in front of them. And then a series of mistakes just cost him time and the win. You see, just overdrove turn 3. Completely left the bottom wide open for the 90 right there. And that's what allowed Colin to get by. But let's see if we can go back even earlier to the restart itself and see just how this exactly unfolded. So right there, they're taking the green flag right here, and the 07 gets another great launch. Kyle Benson gets a good launch, but without that hood, he's unable to really make a move towards Colin Forrester, and that's what allows Forrester to focus on trying to catch the 7. The 7 doesn't really go all the way to the bottom. The 90, on the other hand, is able to methodically stay focused, cut the dog leg to try and maintain. Let's see where he gains some ground, because the 07 right here, he's in a pretty good position to try and reach the white flag And I'm pretty sure you see right there the 90 able to rotate a little bit better. The bottom gets loose off of turn number 4, and that allows the 90 to get a little bit closer into 1 and 2. That puts the pressure on the 07 to try and make up some ground. Misses the bottom, has to lift off the corner, and here comes now Colin Forster to the inside, being very aggressive, going for the win. And into turn 3, this is where it was baked in for him. He goes to the racing line, and the 07 misses the corner into the wall, and that's a second win in a row for the 90 of Colin Forster.
It was that turn 2 exit that pretty much solidified the ending of this race. The 07 kind of missed it. You saw him a little bit high off the corner. Kind of wondered whether the 90 was gaining all that ground, and indeed he did. And what a way to win it from Phoenix. Second time in a row. I don't think we see that at all in any league, anywhere, Francisco. Last lap passes by the same driver to win 2 races in a row.
That you can't really script that, Kenneth. I mean, to win on a last lap pass is very difficult, but to do it 2 races in a row at such completely different venues is very difficult to do. But Colin Forster is starting to prove that he belongs here, Kenneth. I mean, you can see he was not at the very front of the field on one of these ladder restarts before overtime, but he did find himself up front when it mattered most in this race, and that's ultimately what got him the win. And I can't wait to hear what he has to say.
Well, we can't wait at all to hear what the driver of the 90 has to say about this win. After doing it once at Auto Club, he does it again here from the Phoenix Raceway. We'll bring in driver of the 90, Colin Forster, back to victory lane for the second week in a row. Colin, I don't think you can script this any better. Last lap pass at Auto Club to take the win on AJ Green, and you do it all over again. 1 lap led, but the most important one. Walk us through how that was for you in that final lap.
Oh, that final lap, man. I seen he overdrove turn 1 a little bit, so I was just hoping I could gas it up in time just to get to his inside, and just barely got to his inside. But I had to go through like almost as far as I could go through the dog leg. I was just I thought he was gonna overdrive the last turn as well, so I just backed it up a little bit, and sure enough, he overdrove it, and I was just able to pull out in front. I'm super surprised. I feel super bad for the 78 that he lagged out of the session. I think he probably would have had the win.
And it was obviously just the last segment for you that it took to this race. But there were a lot of cautions that came out before that. Obviously, this race for everybody was up and down. Topsy-turvy, whether you had damage, whether you didn't. It was kind of either you were in the midfield, you would come up through the field. But for you, that final 20 laps or so when the cautions were coming out, were there any concerns about the tires and how you and Sean Hamilton or the rest of the field were going to end, considering that it kept going yellow after yellow after yellow?
I knew that I had a little fresher tires than the 07 there. I was just hoping I was hoping we didn't get to the green white checkers, but we did. I just wanted it I wanted us to run one of the green white checkers because I knew I could have got to him, and sure enough I did. But that race was definitely something. A lot of cautions. I mean, I went from the front to the back to the front there at the end, and that's when it matters. I was just able to drive around them. It was a good race overall, especially when that 78 and 26 were battling. They're battling super hard. It was super fun to watch them two battling. Like I said, it's super unfortunate that the 78 car lagged out tonight.
Nonetheless, a fantastic way to win, and I think we can ask you this before Indianapolis. Do we expect this again? Come to the Brickyard next week?
I hope so, but probably not. I'm not very good at Indianapolis, but I'll try my hardest, and we'll see if I can at least end up on the podium.
Well, we'll wish you the best of luck going into the Brickyard next week, but we're going to let you celebrate here again. Last lap pass, 2 wins in a row, Colin. Congratulations for your second win here in the 4Wide Racing Cup Series, and of course, wishing you the best of luck. We'll let you go celebrate from the Valley.
All right, thank you guys.
Colin Forster, the winner. You see there, 1 lap led. That was the most important lap on a green-white checkered. We'll try and see if we can get the driver of the 07 into the booth. However, I don't believe he's in any of the voice chat, so I don't believe we won't be able to talk with him, but we will be able to talk with the driver who survived with a car looking like a modified, the 34 of Lance Hill. He's caught up with Francisco Bacalhau, finishing 3rd tonight in this race.
Lance, it wasn't exactly a pretty one out there today for everybody in the field, but you were able to bring a modified stock car home in P3. Can you just tell us what that was all about?
Yeah, ever since the beginning of the race, I was destroyed. I took my fast pair that first caution, I got caught up in that, and then the second caution, I was caught up in that one, so I was just destroyed from the start, and had to hold on and a little bit of pit strategy there at the end, plus up there towards the front, and my main goal was probably a top 10, and then I got to the top 5, and I was going for a top 5, and then I got on a podium, and I'm like, I'm staying here, I'm gonna fight for this, and I did, and I think it's gonna pay off in points.
You know, when stuff like that happens at the beginning of the race, when you have to use your fast repair on the first caution and then you immediately get caught up in another wreck, that can be very deflating as a driver. But you persevered through all that and were able to come away with the third place. So that was very impressive on your part. Are drives like this early in the season critical for molding what you have to do in later races so that you can think back to, say, today and think, this is still possible. I can still get a good result today.
In the future, if we make it to the playoffs, this race will definitely be one that helps. I feel like it will be. Um, yeah, I feel like this will be one that's gonna be pretty good.
And also, we know that it takes a lot of people to help put this together, and it took a lot of people probably to also help that car get it in shape to finish in third place. So I'll give you the mic here so that you can give your thanks and shout outs to those that helped make this possible.
Yeah, I just want to thank Colin Forster, my teammate, number 90, number 4 of Adam Alshire, my teammate, number 48 of AJ Green, and 71 of Curtis Kelly, for being all just amazing teammates. And, none of us ever gave up that entire race, and we all fought until the end. And, yeah.
Well, we wish you luck moving on into next week at Indianapolis, Lance, and congratulations once again on a hard-fought P3 with a severely damaged race car. So we look forward to seeing what you can do with a clean race car next week.
Thank you, guys.
And as Lance Hill comes home P3, and look at that race car, just shows you the never say die attitude that came out of Lance Hill tonight. Rookie ends up in the 3rd spot. Unfortunately, we were not able to chat with the driver of the 07, the driver who ends up in 2nd, Sean Hamilton. His car definitely with a strong performance tonight, and given he was on the oldest tires in the top 3, Francisco, I think definitely a good effort nonetheless for the driver of the 07, and hopefully we can see a lot of great things coming from him within the rest of this season. But we'll turn things back up to the broadcast booth, and what a race it was. I mean, complete opposite again. The ARCA Series, very clean race. Tonight was very chaotic. Came down to the yellows, another green-white checkered finish, and brought us a lot of excitement. I think our hearts probably weren't pumping below 100 BPM in those final laps.
It was very much a thrilling finish, Kenneth. And I think one thing that the ARCA Series and the Cup Series have going for them that are very similar right now is the fact that we still have one winner through the first 2 weeks in each series, and we have to see, can that driver pull the hat trick and go 3 in a row in the respective cars as we move on to Iowa next week for the ARCA Series and Indianapolis for the Cup Series. We'll have to see if TJ Burst can carry that momentum and win at the short track at Iowa in the cornfield, and can Colin Forster potentially make another last lap pass at Indianapolis to win at the Brickyard. We saw last season at the Brickyard that strategy will play a big, massive role in that race. We saw Brian M. Smith make a questionable pit stop. Well, it wasn't really questionable to me. I was telling him to pit then, and it worked out absolutely in his favor, and he won by a large margin. It ended up getting Scott Healy on the podium as well. So we'll have to see if a timely caution comes out to where a similar strategy gets employed, if we have another rash of cautions, or if we get green flag runs for a change.
It is completely different races from both the ARCA Series and the Cup Series, but it is absolutely parallel with the same winner in both weeks. Now we move to the 3rd week, ARCA at Iowa, Cup at Indianapolis, and we'll see if the streak is broken for both Colin Forster and TJ Bursky going into the next week. Well, a lot of action. We talked about it already, but just going to revert it for you here on what's going to happen next week for the 3rd race of both the ARCA Series for 4-wide racing and the 4-wide racing Cup Series. The coverage will start Tuesday at 9:10 p.m. Eastern as the 4 Wide Racing ARCA Series heads to the land of corn and the Iowa Speedway for 200 laps. We'll have our coverage on the Cable and Racing Network YouTube channel. Try to see if TJ Bursky can go 3 in a row or whether anybody else can take the throne away from him. Same case for Wednesday night, 9:10 p.m. Eastern, right here on the MaxSpeedTV YouTube channel. We'll be live from the Brickyard in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway in the virtual speedway at Indiana. Gonna look to see if anybody can stop Colin Forrester's last lap passes and see if anything changes, or at least we can see a parallel of what happened last season and it becomes a strategy race. Nonetheless, that'll cap off our coverage here from the virtual Phoenix Raceway in the second race of the 4 Wide Racing Cup Series. Big congratulations to Colin Forrester, 2-time winner in a row, back-to-back from the virtual Phoenix Raceway this time by. Big shout out to everybody who's a part of the race council: Matt Roberts, Nicholas Suzuki, Tyler Murray, Craig Laumsager, everybody else who makes things happen each and every week here in the 4 Wide Racing Series, whether it be through ARCA or through the Cup Series. And for all of us at MaxSpeedTV, and for my colleague in the booth, Francisco Bacallao, my name is Kenneth Bueno, saying so long and good night from the Pacific. We finally reach out to the West Coast, go to the Midwest and Indianapolis next Wednesday night.